Am I the asshole for refusing to buy new things for our house? My husband and I have been living together for a few years now, and we have a fairly straightforward arrangement when it comes to finances. We split all essential household expenses equally, things like groceries, electricity, and other utility bills. This system works really well for us. I handle most of the homemaking tasks, such as cooking, cleaning, and making our house feel cozy and welcoming. I also take care of purchasing any additional items we might need or that could improve the overall comfort of our home. For example, I'm the one who buys new crockery, small appliances, or anything decorative like rugs and picture frames. I do this out of my own pocket, as I see it as part of my role in making our home a nice place for both of us. However, my husband has a tendency to be a bit careless with things around the house. He tends to break things, and when he does, he usually doesn't say anything about it. I've had to replace several things over the years that he's either broken or neglected, and I've always done so without complaint. But lately, I've started to feel a little frustrated with the situation. The most recent incident happened just before Christmas. I had bought a nice kettle as a gift for my mother, which was wrapped up and placed under the tree. It was a thoughtful purchase, and I had planned on giving it to her as part of her Christmas present. But just last week, our kettle, which was less than a year old, broke. When I noticed, I asked my husband about it, and his response was always the same: "I don't know." He didn't even take responsibility for it, and I felt irritated that he couldn't be bothered to own up to it. I asked him why he hadn't told me sooner so we could get it replaced, but there was no explanation. So now I've decided that I'm not going to buy a new kettle to replace the one he broke, and I refuse to let him use the one I bought for my mom as a substitute. Instead, I've told him that he'll have to buy a new kettle himself. My reasoning is that I've noticed a pattern where, because he didn't buy something, he doesn't seem to take care of it as much. I'm starting to believe that if he has to spend his own money to replace things, he'll be more careful with them. This has caused a bit of tension between us, and I know it might sound petty, but I just feel like it's time for him to take responsibility for his actions. I'm well aware that he's a bit tight with his money, so I'm fully prepared for the possibility that we might be without a kettle for quite a while. And honestly, part of me is okay with that because I want him to learn the value of taking care of things around the house. I still love him dearly, but I can't shake the feeling that this is a bigger issue than just one broken kettle. It's about respect for the things we own and for each other. Am I in the wrong for thinking like this? Should I just buy the new kettle myself and move on? Or is it fair for me to refuse and ask him to take responsibility for his actions? Am I the asshole for refusing to split plowing costs for a shared driveway? This past spring, I bought and moved into a new house. One of the main reasons I chose this house is that it's within walking distance to my office, local shops, bars, etc. The house has 2 driveways. One is shared with my neighbor, and the other is a smaller private driveway in front of my garage. So far, I've been using the longer, shared driveway, but for winter I don't plan to drive much. I just want to park in the smaller driveway and use the garage so I don't have to deal with clearing snow. I plan to maintain my walkway for easier access. A few weeks ago, my neighbor approached me about splitting the cost of plowing the shared driveway 50/50. I didn't respond right away, but after thinking about it, I told them I didn't think it was reasonable to ask for such a large amount of money, especially since I don't use the shared driveway much during the winter. Their house is a rental property, and they rent out 2 units in the building, using the garage mostly for storage. On top of that, during the summer, they did some major renovations that caused quite a few issues. They blocked the shared driveway for several days at a time, parked construction vehicles on my property, and dumped a bunch of concrete on my land. Honestly, I don't think they've been the best neighbors. Additionally, they asked to have the plow come out whenever it snowed at least 3 inches. Living in New England, we get snowstorms fairly often, so this seemed like overkill to me. I figured that since I don't even plan on using the shared driveway, I didn't want to spend half the cost of a plow service that I wouldn't use. I told them I wasn't interested in splitting the plowing costs. So far this winter, we've had 3 significant storms, and they haven't called anyone to plow. I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should have agreed to contribute something, since I would use the driveway if it was plowed. However, I still feel like they were trying to take advantage of me, especially given how they treated me during the renovation period. On top of that, I don't want my decision to make me look bad in the neighborhood, since I'm new to the community and I own a business in town. People speaking poorly of me could have a direct impact on my reputation. The wife hasn't spoken to me since I turned them down, but the husband seems mostly okay with it. The situation is awkward, and I'm concerned that it's causing tension, especially since the neighbors have lived here much longer than I have. I'm just wondering if I was wrong to refuse to split the cost of plowing, even though I wouldn't be using the shared driveway much this winter. Am I the asshole in this situation? ITA for refusing to pay my parents' mortgage after they took money from my savings without asking? I 18F work for my dad and get paid really well for my age. I've been working for him for a year, saving most of my income in an account they don't have access to, while keeping a little for daily expenses. My relationship with my parents is rocky because their marriage is toxic, and my sibling, 10M, and I are often caught in the crossfire of their unresolved issues. I live with them, but I'm planning to move out and take my sibling with me when I can. Recently, things had been calm between us, so I thought maybe I could trust them more. They've always said my money is mine, so I didn't see this coming. Last night, they asked to see how much was in my savings account. When I showed them, they grabbed my phone and ignored my questions about what they were doing. I overheard them transferring $990, the daily limit, into their loan account without my permission. When I got upset, my dad laughed and told me to transfer another $990 the next day. They didn't explain why they were taking the money or ask for my help beforehand. This morning, my mom admitted it was for their mortgage. I told her they could have asked me instead of taking it without permission. She said, "Your money is our money, and you're getting the house when we die, so what's the problem?" That really hurt because I've worked hard for my savings to secure my future and help my sibling, and now it feels like all my work is pointless. I refused to give them more money, which led to a screaming match with my mom. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful since they've provided for me my whole life. I do feel grateful, but I also feel like they've crossed a line by taking my money without asking and then demanding more. I understand they're under financial stress, but I feel like they're treating me like an ATM instead of their daughter. I'm questioning whether I should just give in to keep the peace, though it feels wrong. Why I might be the asshole. I refuse to give them more money for their mortgage even though I live under their roof and they've supported me in the past. Maybe I'm being selfish by prioritizing my savings instead of helping them during a tough time. Am I in the wrong for saying no? Update. Thanks to everyone that offered their advice. I listened and called the bank, and they have restricted all transfers out of the savings account, which is good. They also said that the only way right now to get the $990 back is by lodging a police report, but I decided against it. I'm just not mentally strong enough to go against my parents like that ATM. Would I be the asshole for not letting my mom in the room for my post-op appointment with the surgeon? Hi everyone. I, 21F, recently had a breast reduction surgery in September. One of the wounds took a little longer to heal, and I may need a scar revision. I have a post-op checkup next week, but the clinic is about 2 hours away. The problem is my mom, 57F, wants to come with me. I didn't specifically ask her to, but I did tell her she could come along for the ride. I also told her, though, that she wouldn't be coming into the room with me for the appointment because I don't feel comfortable with her seeing me topless. This is where things got tense. She's upset and saying I'm ungrateful and that she should be allowed to come into the room to demand a scar revision, as she thinks the money spent on the surgery was wasted. She mentioned how she booked a day off work to be there, even though I never asked her to come inside the appointment. I had already explained to her that the surgeon and I had discussed the scar revision, and that it would be done once the scar fully heals, so I didn't understand her issue. I've been to previous post-op appointments with my partner and other family members, and they've all been fine waiting in the waiting room while I have my checkup. I just told my mom I wasn't comfortable with her being in the room, and that she should respect my boundaries. But she's been going on, saying I'm awful, and now even wants the money she gifted me for the surgery back. I'm just confused. Is it unreasonable to not want my mom in the room with me when I'm only half dressed? I'm still incredibly grateful for the money she gifted me for the surgery, but I just feel uncomfortable with her being present in such a personal moment. Edit. To clarify, My mum gifted me $3,000, while I paid the remaining $6,000 myself. This is to address the comment suggesting she has a right to be there because she paid for part of the surgery. Update. After speaking with her again, she calmed down and I was firm in saying I just don't feel comfortable with her being in the room. Told her if she had any questions, she could write them down and I'd ask the surgeon for her. She finally agreed and seems to be okay now. Thanks, everyone, for encouraging me to stand my ground. Smiley face. ITA for not telling my brother that his STB ex-wife will visit me with their son? Not the a-hole. My brother and his STB ex-wife split at the beginning of this year after almost 4 years of marriage. Both were at fault. My brother did take his son during weekends until October and then stopped for no reason. As my sil and nephew do live further away, we don't see them often. So when my brother stopped picking up his now 4-year-old, we didn't see them at all. During my nephew's birthday last month, we agreed with my sil that she'll come around with her son. Took a while and we did meet up today. My brother saw my sil's car in our town and figured she might come visit me and started texting her and me and even followed her to my place. He did come in and stayed for about 20 minutes before leaving without a goodbye, but told our mum, who came to see her grandson, that he's hurt. He wasn't told. Here where I might have been TA cause my brother asked why I didn't tell him cause he would like to see his son. 2. I respond that he should take action himself, which he hadn't done for the past 13 weeks. For clarification, his STB ex-wife doesn't prevent visitis or pickups. She just wants to know ahead of time, but he has the habit for just showing up unannounced. For context, my brother is 6 years older than me and we never got along. He visits me just if he needs something from me, but our sister and our mother he does visit regularly. So AITA for not telling my brother his son will visit me?
Next story. My boyfriend's parents are controlling everything in our home. Me, F24, and my M27 boyfriend got a starter home together after 3 years of being together, and his parents are controlling everything in our house. How do I fix these boundaries if my boyfriend is unwilling to talk to his family? Last fall, my boyfriend and I were apartment hunting, but couldn't find anything decent. Instead, we decided to look for townhomes or something small. Without communicating with me, he asked his parents for advice, and they quickly became involved in every single decision. I was so grateful and blessed that they wanted to help, but despite me setting boundaries, things started to make me super uncomfortable. His parents made a wish list of furniture for us at West Elm because they had CR*Dick card points they wanted to use. I respectfully told them that I appreciated the offer, but my boyfriend and I had already bought furniture. Not to mention, we have both lived in several apartments on our own and already had a lot of furniture accumulated. When I told them this, they told me to return everything we bought. All 4 of us went to look for hardware and cabinets together, and they were very belittling towards my boyfriend, insinuating that he couldn't make decisions on his own because he didn't know what he liked. This really threw me off and made me feel uncomfortable going shopping with them in the future. I didn't really have a choice on anything in our house because his parents wouldn't listen to me. They even picked out all our bedroom furniture, silverware, dining room table, chairs, decor, everything. A lot of my belongings remain in boxes and bins at my parents' basement because I don't know where to store it. All my appliances, TV, tables, chairs, etc. Most recently, I had moved some of my things into our living room. When his dad came over to help with landscaping, my boyfriend moved all of my things into his truck and hid my cat's belongings in the garage. He said he did this because he knows what his dad likes and just wants to keep the peace. I feel so frustrated that he couldn't stand up to his dad and just tell him face to face that I have a cat and that I want my belongings in our shared spaces. I understand that his dad put money towards the home, but I feel like I don't have a space of my own. Next story. My sister's husband hit on me. I'm so confused about how to deal with this. I'm so angry. 2 nights ago, my husband, F37, my sister, 26, and her husband, 29, and a group of friends went up to a cabin in the mountains and had a private rave, which is something we do once or twice a year. Obviously, people were on a bunch of stuff, so everyone was high, dancing, and enjoying their time. My husband and my sister's husband are very close friends since before we even met them. We've all been married for 4 years now. We have a baby, and they have their first one on the way, which they just found out about exactly 3 days ago. My guts keep telling me that he's not happy with the news, but my sister is insisting that he wants this. For more context, the four of us are very close. We live close to each other, and we spend all our weekends together. They babysit our baby a lot. We're a family, and becoming an even more like a real family, since our children are going to be cousins. Obviously, my sister didn't take any drugs, and she went to sleep relatively early than the rest of us. Her husband and I got to talking, as we always do, now about pregnancy and the new exciting life and all that. At some point I got cold and he put his jacket on me, and I said something like I'm getting old and I'm cold easily, and how tired I am being a mom and I feel old. He tells me how beautiful I am, or how any guy would want to be with me. So far this is very normal. He's like a brother to me, and I appreciated what he said. But then he wouldn't stop at the compliments. It got too much that I felt so uncomfortable. He was being very touchy. He made it seem like it was a brotherly love or whatever, but the vibe was so not that. The way he was looking at me, what he would say, and the way he put his hand on my shoulder or hugged me, it was absolutely a romantic vibe. But then I realized I'm high and he's also high, and I thought there was absolutely no way he would hit on me, and am just reading the signs wrong. Maybe it started in my head, and I made it bigger than it is, so I decided to give it another chance just so he'd prove me wrong, and it's really not that. But as the night went on, wherever I went he followed, and tried so hard to keep the same conversation going. It started to feel like he was flirting with me hard, and my anxiety spiked, and I totally bad tripped for the last 3 hours. What the F is he doing? If he's going to do this, why on earth would he choose his wife's sister and his friend's wife to do this with? He knows very, very well that I'd do anything to protect my sister, even from him. Is he sabotaging his relationship on purpose? I don't understand. But then again, I keep thinking that he was on a lot of stuff, and maybe it was the love drug talking, but there's always a limit you can't cross. No matter how high you are, you're still aware of who I am, aware of what you're saying and talking, and aware that you're married. And your wife is sleeping in a room inside. Obviously, I have to tell my sister. But how? She's in the excitement phase. She just learned she's pregnant. She loves him very much. He also adores her so much, which is why I'm so confused. As soon as we left the next morning, I told my husband everything, and I cried so much. His advice was that I wait a few days, that my sister's husband is still in shock with the news and could be affecting his behavior, and after that to talk to him privately, straight out ask him what a F*** was that about, and that he made me so uncomfortable and thought it was inappropriate. Next story. I 30F and my very new boyfriend 31M keeps telling me what to do. How can I raise this with him? While I was not expecting this response, I thought I was just being stubborn and not wanting anyone to tell me what to do like a kid. Thank you, everyone. I think I have some self-reflection to do, Going to keep reading through and replying to all your awesome comments. We were friends for a year or so before this, which does make a difference as we already know each other well. But less than 2 weeks into dating, and he keeps telling me what to do. I was in an 11-year dead bedroom relationship before this, so I've been living for someone else my entire adult life, and since ending things 4 months ago, I'm finally free to live how I like. Part of living how I like was being with who I wanted and getting to have fun again. He's moving quite fast, and I've had to tell him to slow it down. He's told his friends and family about me already and is making future plans. Whereas Eve only just moved out of my ex's house where we still share a mortgage. Here are some of the things he's already telling me what to do / not to do. I want to buy my own little flat to call my own. He keeps telling me it's a bad idea and a tie and will take ages. He doesn't approve and tries to put me off when I get my own place. I want to get a dog. I had them all my life growing up, and I miss it terribly. I pet sit to fill the void. He goes very serious and says this is a bad idea as I won't be able to travel with him at the drop of a hat. Not something I ever said I wanted anyway. He's been trying to convince me not to get a dog since. Gets impatient and slightly annoyed when I fell asleep on his sofa and didn't go to bed when he told me I should. Said I'm stubborn and being annoying. Doesn't like that I play games with my friend on Saturday nights, 2 to 3 times a month, and says I should spend Saturdays with him instead. Said I shouldn't start horse riding again, as I don't have the time. I've had horses all my life and still have two retired ones. I don't want to lose this skill. I'm painfully attracted to him and have fantasized about being with him for so long. We are so compatible in every other way, other than I hate being told what to do, and he keeps doing it. It's so early on in the relationship that I don't even know how to broach this subject with him. What would be a good way to go about it? I feel like I've been a doll all my life that people expect to do as I'm told and sit pretty on the shelf. Next story. How do I, 27F, explain to my husband, 30M, that him screaming at video games is not okay? I, 27F, have been with my husband, 30M, for close to 10 years, 2.5 years married. Through the years, we've obviously had our ups and downs, but we are in a big slump right now. We decided to start trying to have kids recently and even went through a bunch of genetic and fertility tests to make sure we were prepared. A few months in, I realized that there were so many traits and behaviors that we both, but mostly my husband, needed to work on before I felt comfortable having kids with him. One of the biggest things was his lack of emotional awareness and control. He is one of the biggest hearts ever, but he also can be pretty ruthless sometimes. The biggest problem that made me snap out of it was the fact that when he plays video games, whether winning or losing, he screams pretty loud. He calls it being passionate, but it's so uncomfortable and embarrassing. He used to say pretty vulgar and non-politically correct terms, which I set pretty firm expectations against, and has gotten better about that, but the screaming has not stopped. I know that this behavior is common in some gaming spaces, but I just can't get over or past it. I do not want to raise our kids with that as an example of expressing emotions of anger, dissatisfaction, or even triumph. He has thrown things, controller, his phone, etc. in the past and has gotten away from that habit, but he still doesn't see the issue with the screaming. To add context here, we live in a suburban area and he has an office/game room we have built in the garage. I can hear him in our front and backyards in the house and at our mailbox across the street sometimes. How do I explain to him that his volume and aggressiveness is not okay? TLDR, how do I explain to my husband that even though he's worked on some of his aggressive video game behaviors, it's still not okay for him to scream loud enough that I can hear him across the street, win or lose, and that what he is doing is not being passionate, but a toxic or gross behavior? Edit. Thank you for everyone for taking the time to comment and for sharing your experiences. I wanted to address some of the relevant questions here. What video games does he play, and is it all or just some? He plays mostly COD, but he can react that way to pretty much any game. Does he have ADHD? I do not think he does, but he wouldn't get assessed for it if anyone thought he might, so no clue. I, on the other hand, do. What non-PC things did he say? I'll just say we are both white, and I'm bisexual, so he shouldn't be saying one, and the other hurts me to hear. There is absolutely no need for those words to be used. I will say that he didn't use them outside of trash talk, but I know that is still no excuse and why I told him I would not put up with them being used. Do our values align? Most of the time, no. We have had a lot of discussions and made a lot of compromises along the way. This is another big reason I decided we should wait to have kids, though. I was also raised by a mom who wanted kids bad enough that she ignored her husband's red flags and then stayed in the marriage for religious reasons. I do not want to repeat her mistakes. I have very specific things I do and do not want to do while raising kids, but I do not believe wanting them is a good enough reason to have them. If that is something I do, I want it to be with someone who agrees with me in those values and is willing to address the things we've done wrong down the line when our kids come to us. On that note, how does he react when I come to him about things? Sometimes he is very open to those conversations and feedback, while other times he is not. I did let him know that I was ready to walk away from the relationship if he was not willing to work on the issues I brought to him. I did ask that he give me feedback as well, so I could improve myself. What are the things I needed to work on? As I mentioned above, I have ADHD. I also have severe anxiety and struggle with depression. I am in therapy to work through those things and to address how to build routines and understand myself. Basically, I'm messy. I don't cook as often as I should. He mostly takes care of that. I forget about chores sometimes, and I struggle to do them. I know as an adult it is my responsibility to share in those tasks, so I am working on being more responsible, I guess. Why was it not an issue before, but is now? There have always been things I've asked him to work on, and he did address a lot of the things I brought up to him. The issues we are having now, including the screaming, is something he has not fully resolved or has gotten worse again since being married. I have almost left him several times and that made him work on it for a while, and most things stuck, but not everything. To clarify, I do not just give ultimatums when it's rough because I hate that. I struggle with confrontation, so I have to work up the nerve to have these conversations with him, and by that time, I am almost resolved to leave. I feel that isn't fair because I've not given him the opportunity to address them, so usually we end up working through it. I am fully prepared to leave this relationship should he choose not to address his issues this time in a way that doesn't just work for now, but creates lasting changes. Is therapy an option? I have asked him to go to therapy in the past, whether individual or couples. He did not want to until I told him I was ready to leave. He went for 3 months by himself, then stopped going because he didn't really see the need and his therapist wasn't helping him, as well as it was too expensive for him to continue. I have been in therapy myself for a couple years now. I have had to schedule an appointment for the two of us to go together, through my benefits. I specifically mentioned anger management issues, so they put us with someone who has been doing that for close to 40 years. We have not been able to get in yet, but have the appointment for soon. What is he can be pretty ruthless? Two of the other issues we are addressing are name-calling and unintentional belittling. I know this is not an excuse, but I am clarifying anyways. This is the example he was raised with. His stepdad is one of the worst human beings I have ever met when it comes to abusing their partner without laying a hand on them. He talks down to my husband's mother, calls her names, belittles her, and treats her like garbage. He likes to make others feel small compared to him by bullying and gaslighting. He makes everyone the butt of the joke while talking himself up in the process and then makes you believe you're the problem for having an issue with it. My husband's mom and I are in the same boat of wanting to get out but also needing to know we've tried everything to honor our vows first. My husband, unlike his stepdad, is trying to address those qualities, at least to some extent, which is why I have stayed as long as I have. I know his behavior is unacceptable and I am fully prepared to walk away if this continues. I do not think that wanting kids is good enough reason to just have them. I want to be emotionally, mentally, and financially prepared for that. Everyone always says there's no right time, but I know right now is not the right time. Am I the asshole for not eating a Thanksgiving dish I suspect was made last year? I'm in my 30s and my husband and I have a large family. We celebrated Thanksgiving with over 20 people, including my divorced parents, their new spouses, siblings, and kids. Every year, everyone brings a dish, and we usually coordinate to avoid repeats. This year, my sister-in-law, SL, brought her mom's famous sweet potato casserole. I thought it was sweet since her mom passed away earlier this year, and she was honoring her memory. But when I saw the dish, it didn't seem right. It looked like last year's leftovers. The casserole came in several small containers, and while it didn't smell off, it was dry and didn't look like a fresh casserole. I didn't try it and discreetly told my husband about my concerns. He didn't try it either. Later, my mom called me, saying my SIL was upset because she noticed I didn't eat her dish. I explained my fears to my mom, who dismissed them, saying I was just being too picky. She assured me that a frozen casserole couldn't last a year without getting moldy, but I wasn't convinced. I feel bad for my SIL, but I couldn't bring myself to eat something I wasn't sure was safe. So, am I the asshole for not eating it? Update: after reading your comments, I decided to have a face-to-face conversation with my mom. We agreed I could always be honest with her, and she hadn't told anyone else in the family about the yam debacle, We called my brother and arranged a meeting with him and my SIL. When we got there, my SIL was crying, and my brother led us to the kitchen. It turns out the casserole wasn't a year-old leftover after all. Before her mom passed, SIL had made several family recipes, including the sweet potato casserole, as a bonding experience. She had frozen some portions, and this year, she thawed them to serve at Thanksgiving. She'd tried to replicate the taste but struggled, feeling the pressure. In the end, she decided to serve the frozen casserole, thinking no one would notice. Apparently, I had always complimented her casserole in the past, and she was expecting praise this year too. When I didn't try it, she felt hurt. I apologized to her for hurting her feelings, and she apologized for singling me out. Afterward, my mom, brother, and I cleaned the kitchen, and my mom made us a soup, ajiaco, if you know, you know. As a gesture of goodwill, I'm planning to treat my SIL to a mini spa day to help her feel better. So, no big fight, no drama. I'll be more thoughtful in the future, but I still stand by not eating something I wasn't comfortable with. Everyone's fine, and no one got sick. And as for my mom's belief about frozen food and mold, I don't know what to say. Her freezer only had meat and ice cream. Title: I, 29F, set a boundary about marriage, but I'm worried my boyfriend, 35M, has no intention of proposing. What should I do? I, 29F, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend, 35M, for 5 years, and we have a 1-year-old daughter together. Marriage has always been very important to me, and my boyfriend knew this from the start. Initially, I thought the delay in getting married was due to the financial pressures we were facing from buying a house and the unexpected, but very much wanted pregnancy. It was a stressful time for both of us, but I assumed we would get there eventually. However, when I was 7 months pregnant, my boyfriend expressed concerns about our relationship. He said that while he wanted to get married eventually, there were some issues we needed to address first. This conversation took place over a year ago now. Since then, I have worked hard to improve myself, both as a partner and a mother. I feel that I've addressed most, if not all, of the issues he raised during that conversation. However, despite all my efforts, he hasn't mentioned marriage again. At that time, I made it clear that marriage was a goal for me, and I needed a decision on whether we would get married by the end of this year. I've been transparent about my expectations, and I've done everything I can to contribute to the relationship. I haven't brought up the topic of marriage again, as I believe he knows how I feel and what my timeline is. But lately, I've had a gut feeling that he has no intention of proposing before the end of the year. I really want this relationship to work, especially for the sake of our daughter, but I don't want to continue in a relationship where there is no commitment. What should I do? Should I bring it up again, risking the possibility of ruining a potential surprise proposal? Or should I stay silent and, if he hasn't proposed by the end of the year, follow through with my boundary and move out? Update: after receiving a lot of helpful advice, I decided to sit down and have an honest conversation with him. I asked him how he felt about our relationship and about the concerns he had raised previously. Many of you asked what those issues were, so here's a bit more context. When I was 7 months pregnant, I was stressed out, working long hours to help save for the down payment on our house, and dealing with a high-risk pregnancy. I wasn't easy to be around, and we fought over little things. He was unhappy, and we were both under a lot of pressure. Once we closed on the house, I gave birth to our daughter and went on maternity leave. The tension and fighting naturally eased. It was really a stressful phase in my life, but things seemed to calm down after a while. When I brought up our previous conversation about marriage, he said that he didn't think it was a fair comparison to make because I'm now balancing family and school commitments, and he feels like it's not the same as before. I pointed out that, yes, I'm busy, but I've been handling the pressures of family life and school without letting it affect my mood or the relationship. In the end, he said there are new problems, but he couldn't quite articulate what they were. He just mentioned that he's unhappy but would let me know when I do something that bothers him. At this point, I decided to get to the heart of the matter, so I directly asked him if he wanted to marry me. He immediately said it wasn't the right time to have that discussion and ended the conversation. When I mentioned our previous discussion about marriage and the timeline, he tensed up and said he didn't even remember the conversation. For those asking, I just wanted a simple courthouse wedding, nothing fancy. Finances weren't a factor. Some people have suggested counseling, but I don't see the point in continuing to invest more time and energy into a relationship that seems to be going nowhere. I'm not interested in convincing him to marry me. He's had plenty of time to make this decision, and at this point, I'm not willing to wait anymore. I'm disappointed, but also relieved to have clarity. This situation has been incredibly stressful and distracting, and I can't continue like this. I've made the decision to leave. Now, I need to figure out what that looks like and how to make it work. Next story. My 26F husband's 28 feet stink and I can't stand it anymore. I get that feet are not the cleanest part of the body and that they're bound to smell sometimes. But Jesus Christ. For context, my husband works in a wood mill. He wears heavy work boots, which of course make his feet sweat. He will often rewear pairs of socks he wore to work, sometimes wearing the same pair for 3 or 4 days. I've asked him not to do this because it smells so horrid, I can't deal with it. But even still, that doesn't matter. As soon as he comes home and takes his shoes and socks off, the smell is instant and permeates the air. It even lasts after he takes a shower. And it doesn't smell like just sweaty feet from a long day. No. It legitimately smells like he has been walking around in a sewage tank, and I've asked myself on several occasions if that's what he's really doing before he comes home. Because I just cannot fathom the smell and how it is that bad. I've tried to be nice to him about it before with little suggestions, and he gets defensive and mopey. I try to be firm about it and tell him to wash his damn feet. Same reaction. At this point, I don't know what else to do. I'm currently hiding in my bathroom because I cannot stand to be laying next to him as he sleeps and stinks up the entire bedroom. We've been together almost 10 years and his feet have never not had a little odor to them, but never this bad. Next story. My 30/F husband, 35/M, ruins all occasions and events by sulking. I really love my husband, he does a lot for me, and is an all-around great guy. Sure, we have a few issues, but we are mostly working around them, and that's alright. But one almost deal-breaker kind of issue that we have is that when he gets upset, he gets really upset. And that can be before important events or date nights, and that ruins the event. That's not to say that I don't fight with him before events too. It'll be me being annoyed, pointing out something, then him saying sorry or refuting my allegation, and then I'll just consciously decide to either resolve it or shelve it till later and continue having fun at the event. But he stews in it like a wet towel if he gets angry and then just sulks through the event, and that ruins my mood and the event. Example, yesterday I had tickets for a comedy show which we were supposed to go to. He was at the venue on time, and I was stuck in traffic in pouring rain and reached half an hour late. I had met up with a friend for drinks prior, and I did try my hardest to schedule enough buffer time. I told him to please wait comfortably in the car as I was getting late, and I gave him a screenshot of the ticket, so he could go in before I came also. He told me they were not accepting screenshots, but wanted to see them on my phone. By the time I reached, he was extremely angry. I apologized profusely and showed the PPL the same screenshot, and they accepted it. And we went in. He was sulking the whole show, did not laugh or smile. I tried so hard to hold his hand and try to cheer him up, to no avail, and then we canceled the dinner date we were going to go on and came back home. He said he was getting bit by mosquitoes, could have sat in car, and he was not let in, but we were let in with that same mode. This makes me feel like he allowed himself to get extremely angry on purpose. Contrast this with, we had a huge fight once before going on a hike, and I cried a lot the night before, but the next morning I decided to have a good time and then sort it out once we got home. And we did. In our 3 years of dating, almost every trip, every Christmas, every birthday, every activity I had planned has gone this way. Because when he gets angry at something small, he will not accept your apology, not let you salvage the situation, and will just sit there silently and sulk. There was one time I made a throwaway comment which was not even rude, which he misunderstood during a trip, and then the rest of the trip was him sitting there silently, me apologizing and being irritated at the same time. We have a great marriage otherwise. But I have panic attacks about having to give up all the fun things in life because my companion is like this. I sometimes wish he wasn't there so I can have fun. I am so scared that the rest of my life will be like this. Before we went on a recent vacation to Thailand, which we planned for months, I told him, if you sulk and fight on this trip, I will never travel with you again. I don't know if that worked or what, but we didn't fight. This is especially weird for me, because my mom was this way. Every event was ruined because she got upset over something tiny and wanted to punish us with her mood. It got to a point where my dad stopped inviting her, or even telling her about the things he was planning to do. I am scared that that's where my relationship is also headed. How do I fix this? What should I do in this situation? TL, DR, husband gets upset, sulks and ruins all occasions, trips and events. I want to experience these fun and amazing things with him, but I am scared that this negative attitude he brings will ruin all fun events and occasions in my life. What should we do? Edit 1. Random thing. But when we eventually fought about it, he said, "You want to be let off the hook for your mistake, and that's why you expected me to get over it soon." Like, man, I didn't talk to me about how disappointed you are later. I wanted to be let off the hook for 1 or 2 hours, where we watch a show and have dinner. That's not too much, right? Edit 2. For people advising me to leave, I am soft exiting. In the sense, I am trying to see what life alone will be like for me. I have gotten a job in a different country that will keep me away for 2 years at the least. I could extend it if I wanted. The employers have shown a lot of interest in me making it permanent. It will be a long-distance marriage at that point, but I need to give myself a chance to see what a life without him will look like for me. If that life is better, then that's what it'll be for me. Next story. Fiancé expects me to pay off her debt to her parents before marriage, then pay for everything during marriage. Hi everyone. A good bit of background here. I, 43M, proposed to my fiancé, 38F, 3 weekends ago, and we are thinking about getting married next spring-summer. We've been together for approximately 2 years and don't live together, but see each other 3 to 5 days a week. She has a son who's planning to go to university in a couple years, and I have no children. I take care of my mother, who has dementia, while working remotely at my mother's place. My fiancé owns a house with approximately $180K left in the mortgage, and she has a debt to her parents of $200K, which was used to offset her mortgage. She is also in the midst of a lawsuit from last year for $200K from her ex, not the son's father, who claims that is the amount he put into that house. A couple months ago, she asked if I can pay back the debt to her parents in a lump sum, 80% of my savings, if we get married, and I told her that I'd rather pay off the mortgage, so we won't have to pay the bank interest, and she disagreed. She is adamant about paying off her parents' debt, so they can enjoy their money while they're living, to which I agree. I let her know back then that I would like to have my name on the house deed before I make any payments towards that house, including debt to her parents, to which she obliged. The $200,000 she is asking for is about 80% of my current savings. She says she is living paycheck to paycheck, to which I lent her $15K over the past year to help her with bills. I know it's not easy for her being a single mother with a house to pay for. She makes $90K per year, and I make $135K. I was planning to move into the house next month and work from my mother's place to take care of her, while my fiancé and her son are at work and school. I would return to my fiancé's house and hire part-time help for my mother whenever I'm absent. My fiancé disagreed with that plan, but she agreed for me to visit my mother on Sundays, while hiring someone to check in on my mother for 30 minutes 4x per day on the remaining days. This will cost about $1,500 per month. While living with my fiancé, I let her know that I can cover her monthly bills for the house, internet, gas, water, electricity, cell phones, and car insurance, but I will not pay anything towards the mortgage/debt without my name on the deed. She agreed. The reason I'm asking for some sort of ownership of the house is because of her past lawsuit, where she threw her ex out of the house, and he was basically a renter from the time they got the house together 8 years ago. He did not have documented ownership. They did so she can secure her mortgage in her name. I want to avoid a similar situation in case things don't work out between us in the future. A couple nights ago, she mentioned that her cousin broke off her wedding plans because her fiancé disagrees on how the finances are split. She asked me, "What are your plans for our finances?" We spoke about this before, and I told her the same thing. Once my name is on the house deed, I'd like to share monthly bills such that we each have an equivalent amount to spend/save once bills are paid. I.e., after bills, she'll have $2,000 left from her monthly pay, and I'll have $2,000 left. This would be easy if we had a shared bank account, but she is against that and wants us to have access to each other's account in case either of us kicks the bucket. After I explained the expense-sharing idea, she got furious and said the man should pay for absolutely everything. I asked her, "What if I go broke? What are you going to do with the money you'll be saving?" She said she'll pay whatever remaining bills, and the money she saves in her account will be icing on the cake for spending money, for which I'd have to let her know about whenever I make a purchase. She has no plan for savings. I told her I disagree with that and would rather share everything more evenly, but she considers any splitting of bills to be a bad idea. I'm thinking she got influenced by her cousin's breakup. The next day, she said she wants to break up with me through text because she wants to stick to her plan. How can I salvage this relationship so we both can agree on finances, with neither of us breaking our bank accounts? I already proposed a shared spending account to which we deposit our paychecks into. She totally disagrees with that. TLDR, my fiancé wants me to pay all expenses while we're married, including prior debt to her parents, while the money she brings into her bank account is used for our additional spending. I disagree with that and would like to have a shared or equally distributed income after all bills are paid. She wants to break up because of this. How can I find a more common solution? Update. She paid me back $11K for separate $5K and $6K loans 5 months ago and borrowed $4K to repair her leaking roof a month afterwards, to which she still owes me. I found out about her ex's lawsuit almost a year ago. From time to time, I'd ask her what the status was, and she'd always say that she heard no updates from her lawyer. The last time I asked was a couple months ago.
Am I the asshole for refusing to look after the child of a parent who may need to go to the hospital? I have 2 daughters in their early teens. The older one is autistic. A couple of years ago, my younger daughter had a sleepover with about 6 or so friends for her birthday. A few days later, we received a request from the father, Gary, of one of these girls, Elsie, asking if she could stay over because he had to work a night shift. My wife and I were surprised by this request, as we didn't know him well and we wouldn't want our kids staying with someone we didn't know. However, we agreed and Elsie stayed with us. Elsie and Gary then signed up for a weekly class that both my kids attend. Since Gary doesn't drive, I started giving them a lift every week. This is the only interaction I have with Gary. I'm not close with him at all. Despite this, he asked a few more times, about 3 or 4, if Elsie could stay at our house. Over the past year or 2, my daughter has grown distant from Elsie and my older autistic daughter doesn't like the invasion of her space when we have someone stay over. It also complicates our work-from-home situation, as we need our office set up as an extra bedroom. My kids usually cycle to school, but since Elsie doesn't have a bike, I need to drive them, which is an inconvenience to me. Even so, we always agreed to help Gary out since he's a single parent and Elsie seemed to be in need. Recently, Gary became ill and was admitted to the hospital. He asked if Elsie could stay with us again while he was in the hospital, and we agreed because we felt sorry for him. We ended up looking after her for 5 days, but at first we weren't sure how long it would be. Gary knew he would need to go back to the hospital at some point but didn't make any arrangements for Elsie. When he was admitted again, he assumed she could stay with us once more. We felt we had no choice but to look after her. This time it was for 10 days and it was really pushing our limits. My autistic daughter was really struggling with having a guest in the house for that long. A few days after Gary got out of the hospital, he messaged us to say that he might need to go back in and asked if Elsie could stay with us again. This time, I quickly shut it down and said there's no way she can stay again. I feel bad because he's a single parent and claims he has no one else to turn to, but I also feel he's had plenty of time to make other arrangements, and I need to put my own children first. Elsie's mother is alive but not an option for reasons I don't know. So, am I the asshole for not helping out a sick father in need for the 6th or 7th time? Am I the asshole for kicking my niece out of my apartment when she needed my help? My wife, 26F, and I, 27M, live a relatively quiet life. My sister has 2 kids, one of which is my niece, J, 15F. Growing up with my sister, I know very well that living with her isn't easy, and I sympathize with my niece, especially since she often gets into arguments with her mom. But Jay isn't exactly an angel either. Everyone in the family knows that. This year, Jay asked if she could stay with me in my apartment for the summer break, as she and her mom had gotten into a particularly nasty argument, and she wanted help and guidance. I hesitantly agreed and said she could stay for 2 months. Unfortunately, there were a lot of issues with Jay. First, she's a pathological liar. About 50% of what she says is untrue, and she'll lie straight to your face even when you know the truth. I have a cabinet full of alcohol that we save for family gatherings and date nights. We don't drink otherwise. I hid the alcohol from Jay, but she found it. Within 3 days, she drank everything. When I checked the hiding place, all the bottles were empty. I installed security cameras in the house because of her behavior and caught her on tape stealing money from my wallet. She also broke a few of our things out of anger, and when we asked her about it, she said it was an accident. It was on camera. I tried multiple times to spend time with her and connect with her, but she showed no respect or seriousness. Everything was a joke to her. The final straw came when I confronted her about the alcohol and money she stole. She not only didn't apologize, but lied and said that my wife did it and was framing her because she hates her. Even after I told her I had footage of her doing it, she still denied it, saying I was conspiring against her. I lost my temper. It had only been 5 weeks, but I was done. I called my sister and told her Jay would be coming back to her house the next morning. Jay begged me not to send her back. When I asked her why she couldn't stay with her aunt or father, she claimed neither would take her because they were conspiring against her too. Surprise, she had stolen from them and lied to them too, so no one wanted anything to do with her. I didn't care. I drove her back home to her mom and told my sister everything Jay had done. My sister was furious with Jay, so I left immediately. Now, I feel a little bad because Jay's mom is always angry, and her family doesn't want anything to do with her. It probably didn't help that I told my sister everything Jay had done, but at the same time, I feel these are the consequences of her actions. So, am I the asshole for kicking my niece out of my apartment? Am I the asshole for screaming at my parents because of my brother's lateness that keeps ruining things for me? I, 16F, feel like I've hit my limit with my older brother, 17M. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had mock exams at 8:40 a.m. When my dad is home, he drives us instead of us taking the bus. You'd think this would make things easier, but my brother ruins it every single time. I told him to be ready by 8:05, but he was late every single time, usually by 10 minutes or more. He'd blame my mom for his late breakfast or say he couldn't find his clothes. When I pointed it out, he'd tell me to just take the bus instead of owning up to it. But when my dad is home, I'd rather not waste money on the bus or stress about whether it's on time. During his exams, I was ready early every morning and sat at school 40 minutes early just to help him. But now that it's my turn, he doesn't care. He told me to wake him earlier if I want him ready. But why should I? I can get ready in 20 minutes. He takes over an hour and still blames everyone else. He never faces consequences. My school starts earlier, and my teachers are strict because I was often late last year. If I'm late now, I'm humiliated in front of my class and given a 30-minute detention. Meanwhile, his school doesn't punish lateness much, so he doesn't care. It's not just about school. We had doctor's appointments booked 10 minutes apart. I let him take the earlier one since he wanted to get to school faster. He had 2 hours to get ready but still made us late because he was brushing his teeth at the last second. If we missed the check-in, we would have had to wait hours, but he didn't care and said, "I'll just take your appointment." Once again, his lateness would have had me take on the consequences. This happens all the time and I'm exhausted. Between exam stress and constantly cleaning up his messes, I finally snapped. I screamed at him and my parents, calling them all incompetent. My parents allow his behavior and treat a 17-year-old like a baby. My mom makes him 3 dishes for breakfast, packs him lunch even though he already eats at school, and cooks 2 dinners for him, one before and one after his gym session. He demands that every meal he has be packed with protein. If his football clothes aren't ready, he yells at her. He does nothing for himself because he knows my parents will pick up the slack. He spends hundreds of pounds every Christmas and birthday but won't lift a finger for anyone else. Whenever I try to talk about it, my parents tell me to let it go, because talking about it won't change anything. I'm sick of being punished for his selfishness and being treated like my frustration doesn't matter. All I've done is try to stay organized, but all the consequences land on me while they don't affect him at all. So, am I the asshole for screaming at them after everything I've been through? Hello, Reddit. I'm in a bit of a dilemma with my girlfriend, Sarah. and I'm hoping to get some advice. We've been together for about 18 months now, and things were great in the beginning, but recently I'm not so sure where we're headed. To give some context, Sarah and I met at the start of our freshman year at university. It was a time for new experiences and meeting new people, and we hit it off pretty quickly. She's a great person, beautiful, kind, and caring. I love her a lot, and I've been happy in our relationship for the most part. However, there's one major issue that's causing tension between us: our priorities. While I'm very focused on my academics, Sarah has always been more interested in the social side of college. I've maintained a high GPA and have been really committed to my studies. I've never missed a class, and I work hard for my grades. On the other hand, Sarah tends to go out a lot, partying or drinking with friends, and since turning 21, it seems to have gotten worse. She has a habit of staying out late, sleeping in, and sometimes skipping class altogether. I don't want to hover or nag, so I've tried to be supportive. I'll wake her up, but if she says she's got it, I let her handle it. But over time, I've noticed her grades have been slipping. She was placed on academic probation after the spring semester and was told she needs to raise her GPA by the end of this current semester or she'll be expelled. At the start of the semester, Sarah seemed to be putting in more effort, going to class, doing assignments, and I tried to help where I could. But as the semester went on, her old habits returned, and now her grades are once again suffering. Before the fall break, she was starting to panic, constantly texting me for help with assignments. I tried my best to help, but there's only so much I can do, and her performance wasn't improving. Right before we went on break, I sat down with her and gently told her that she might need to start considering what she'd do if she gets kicked out of school. That was a hard conversation, and she got really upset. She cried, and while I was trying to comfort her, she started asking me what would happen to our relationship if she gets expelled. I reassured her at that moment, telling her I didn't plan on breaking up. But now, during the break, she's been texting me a lot about possible plans. Getting a job in the same city as the university, possibly living in an off-campus apartment together. She keeps asking me to promise that we'll stay together, no matter what happens with her academic situation. The truth is, while I do love her, I'm starting to feel unsure about the future of our relationship. I'm frustrated because I feel like I've done everything I could to help her succeed, but she didn't seem to put in the same effort. She didn't face any major personal setbacks. She just partied and didn't prioritize school. Now, she seems to expect me to adjust to her life being in turmoil, and it's starting to feel like a burden. Part of me feels guilty for even thinking this way, but I'm also feeling like I'm progressing in my own life while she's stuck. I want to be with someone who's moving forward in a similar way, and I'm not sure I'm willing to commit to someone who isn't currently focused on their own growth. Has anyone been through something similar? Were you able to navigate it? Are Sarah and I doomed? Or is there a way for us to work through this? Am I the asshole for yelling at my sister for putting her phone on Do Not Disturb and leaving her first grader at school without picking him up? Today at 4 p.m., I received a call from my nephew's elementary school. He's 7 years old and in first grade. The school informed me that he had been left at school for about 40 minutes after dismissal. The office had tried reaching his parents, my sister and her husband, without success. They asked if I could get in touch with them. I tried calling both of them, but their phones were on Do Not Disturb. The calls would ring once and then go straight to voicemail, which struck me as odd, since their phones usually ring a few times before going to voicemail. With no one answering, I started getting concerned and decided to go pick up my nephew myself. While I was on my way to the school, I kept trying to reach my sister. Finally, about 90 minutes after the school first tried to contact her, she called me back. She explained that she and her husband had been napping and hadn't heard the phone. I was furious. I felt it was incredibly irresponsible to leave their child stranded at school while silencing their phones, especially as parents of a young child and a toddler. She told me that her husband had arranged for his grandparents to pick up my nephew, but there was a miscommunication. I told her that even if that was the plan, she should never have had her phone on Do Not Disturb. Emergencies like this can happen, and she should have been reachable. Her response shocked me. She said that she likes having her phone on Do Not Disturb during naps and If I was going to react this way, she would remove me from my nephew's emergency contact list. She also pointed out that I was the last person on the list anyway, with the grandparents listed first. She then accused me of overreacting, saying that normal people wouldn't get angry over something like this. She even mentioned that she had made a lot of new friends this year and now understood how normal people act. I found that insulting because I was the only one responsible enough to answer the school's call and ensure her child's safety. She continued to justify her actions, saying it's normal for people not to answer their phones if they're busy, at work, or in meetings. She insisted that having her phone on Do Not Disturb was necessary because she naps with her toddler and needs complete silence. By the end of the conversation, she tried to make me feel guilty, saying that while I had a right to be concerned, I had no right to be angry or yell at her. She then added that she doesn't like spending time with family because there's always an argument when she talks to us. This left me completely baffled. Instead of showing any gratitude for my help, she threw backhanded insults at me, even though I was the one who made sure her child was safe. Her reaction made me question whether I was wrong to be upset, but I still feel her behavior was irresponsible and ungrateful. So, am I the asshole for yelling at my sister over this? Am I the asshole for not being excited for my sister's pregnancy and telling her I'll be in Japan at the due date? I'm not sure if I'm the asshole, as I've asked a few friends and they seem pretty evenly split on whether or not I am. Some background: I, 27F, have a sister, Kara, 28F, who is separated from her husband Derek, 30M, after almost 3 years of marriage. Kara has been living with her boyfriend, Dean, 38M, for about 6 months now, and they've been dating for 8 months. Derek was a terrible husband, and honestly, a lot of the red flags I saw in him I now see in Dean. Kara tends to be very gullible and naive, and I don't think she sees it, but I do. To the point where I can't stand to be around Dean because he reminds me so much of Derek. Kara has 2 kids, Jake, 5M, and Naomi, 3F. And she's had incredibly difficult pregnancies, especially with Jake, where we were told there was a high chance she might not survive his delivery. Now, to the issue. Yesterday, Kara told me she was pregnant, and she's due in early May. She was obviously excited about it, but where I might be the asshole is that, instead of being happy for her like she expected, I told her I couldn't be. I explained that I wasn't excited due to her health issues, and because I don't know Dean well enough to be excited for her. The few times I've been around him, I didn't like how he treated my nephew and niece, and he reminds me too much of Derek for me to ever like him. Kara got upset and said I was just upset because this would mean I'd have to cancel my plans to spend 3 months, April, June, in Japan before I start grad school, so I could help her. I work from home and did help my other sister, 25F, when she had her baby, spending a month with her before and after the birth. I told Kara that my plans to go to Japan were set, and I wouldn't be changing them. I'd still be going, and nothing was going to change. She called me an asshole for not being excited for her and for choosing Japan over helping her with the baby, like I had for our other sister. Am I the asshole? I feel like I could be, especially since Kara wants so badly for me to be happy for her, and I could consider shortening my trip to help her out a little more. Am I the asshole for not forgiving my sister-in-law when she didn't apologize for something she did? Context: I, 31F, moved to my husband's, 31M, country 4 years ago. None of my family lives here, and his family is nearby. I have a good relationship with my mother-in-law and father-in-law, and my relationship with my husband's siblings, SIL, 29F, and BIL, 25M, is generally good. A few weeks ago, it was my 31st birthday. Last year, my BIL used my birthday gathering to plan his own birthday party. To avoid a repeat, I decided not to make a big deal out of this year's celebration. I didn't want to spend money on a party, and I didn't want the attention to be diverted again. We decided to celebrate at my in-laws' house because they have more space. We invited my husband's siblings and their partners. They arrived late, around 4:30 p.m., which is typical for this family and not a big deal. Since I live in a foreign country, English isn't the primary language. I know the language but find it hard to keep up with many fast conversations at once. Everyone spoke in the local language throughout the evening, which made me feel disconnected and overstimulated. Eventually, I gave up trying to keep up and started scrolling on my phone. The problem began when my SIL asked if she could show her vacation pictures to everyone. In my husband's family, it's common to share vacation photos at gatherings, but the way SIL asked caught me off guard. She asked for my permission in front of everyone, which made me feel obligated to say yes. I found it rude to show vacation pictures at someone else's birthday celebration. I briefly excused myself to get coffee. When I returned, Bil and his girlfriend asked to see our wedding photos, which they hadn't yet seen. Sale seemed disappointed, and she and Mal went to the kitchen, where they had a loud conversation that we could all hear from the living room. After viewing the wedding photos, we had dinner, and Sil again pushed for us to look at her vacation pictures. She and her husband spent about an hour going through the pictures, explaining each one in detail. Again, it was in the local language and I struggled to follow. My husband noticed and told me to put my phone away, which frustrated me further. The last picture they showed was a sonogram, and they announced their pregnancy. They had many chances to announce this before or after that day, but they chose that moment. I faked a smile, congratulated them, and excused myself to the bathroom. My husband and I left soon after, and he didn't understand why I was upset. In his culture, it's normal to announce major life milestones at other celebrations, but in my culture, it's not. We argued about it for the rest of the night and the next day. SIL's response. An hour later, SIL sent me a text justifying their timing and laughing it off. I responded, saying I was happy for them but hurt by the way they announced it. She later responded, claiming they were hurt by my reaction and that my response had cast a dark shadow over their happiness. She didn't apologize but continued to justify her actions. So, Reddit AITA for not simply forgiving her and moving on? Edit 1. Just to clarify, I do speak the local language. Not fluently, but I understand significantly more than I can speak. I can follow a conversation and hold one, but what I can't do is follow 4 simultaneous conversations being held all at once, with people shouting across the room towards each other. This is a very common practice for birthdays in this country, the Netherlands. It's called the Ring of Doom. It's the standard layout for birthdays here, and people gravitate toward it. I think it would be difficult to keep up even in my native language, let alone a foreign one. Edit 2. Some people seem to think I expect a huge, milestone-like celebration for my non-milestone birthday. That's not the case. I'm honestly more than happy not to celebrate at all. I don't need presents, don't like attention, and don't want the work of organizing events. Birthdays are important to my husband and his family, milestone birthday or otherwise. Every year I am asked for birthday plans, and every year I put it off as long as possible. After the events of last year, I really put it off until basically the weekend before, then relented and said we could do something low-key at my husband's parents' house. Before anyone says, nobody forced you to do it. Yes, I know. I did it because it's important to my husband and his family. That being said, if I do go ahead and plan something and set time aside for it, it's not meant for someone else to swoop in and use it for their convenience. I don't think that's acceptable. The main issue here is that I communicated clearly to SIL that I was upset by her actions, and instead of acknowledging my feelings, she doubled down, justified everything, and flipped the situation on me, telling me how I upset them by casting a dark cloud over their happy news. Am I the asshole for refusing to return Pokemon cards gifted to me years ago, even though the original owners are begging for them back? Context. About 8 to 10 years ago, I, 18M, was given a collection of Pokemon cards by a family I'll call the Johnsons. At the time, they weren't interested in collecting anymore, and the mom thought I'd enjoy them more, so she gave them to me. They never mentioned that the cards were only temporarily given to me, so I considered them mine and mixed them in with the cards I bought and the ones I inherited from my older brother. The situation now. Recently, I found out that the Johnsons have been trying to reach out for the past 2 years, first casually and now almost pleadingly, asking for the cards back. They even offered to pay me for them. I'm assuming they didn't realize how valuable the cards were when they gave them to me. While I still have all the cards, they're mixed in with mine and my brother's, so separating them would be almost impossible without a significant effort. When I first got these cards, I didn't collect them, I actually played with them. Growing up, they're not in perfect condition anymore, so while some might still have sentimental value, they're definitely not in the kind of condition collectors typically look for. Complications. To make things more complicated, the Johnsons are actually relatives of mine, which adds some pressure because I don't want to cause any tension or bad blood. However, it feels unfair to have to undo years of collecting and preserving something that they willingly gave to me. The cards are now mixed with my own collection, and I've taken care of them for years. I've told them the cards were a gift and that I've kept them in good condition over the years. But they keep pushing, saying it's only fair to return something they regret giving away. Some of my friends think I should just give them back to avoid the hassle, while others believe that since it was a gift, I'm not obligated to return them. So, AITA for refusing to return the cards, even though they've offered to pay? Or should I just give in to keep the peace? Edit. For clarity, I was never told that the cards were on loan or that they expected them back. At the time, it was just a gift. I also don't think the Johnsons realized how much the cards would be worth now. I didn't start collecting seriously until later on, so it wasn't until more recently that I even understood their full value. Also, I understand that they may be feeling regret about giving them away, but I've had them for so long now that it doesn't feel right to just give them back after all this time, especially since they're now part of my personal collection. Am I the asshole for refusing neighbors' gifts? Context. I'm a retired woman living with my adult son. My neighbor, who is also retired, keeps bringing me food. Even though I've repeatedly told her that both my son and I are on special diets, we don't eat pork, and I don't have enough room in my fridge/freezer. I've tried to be polite about it, and I've told her that if she has too many avocados, for example, I'd appreciate a few, but that's it. It's been going on for 2 or 3 years, and while I do appreciate her gesture, it's become a burden. In the past, I felt obligated to return the favor by giving her something I made in exchange for the food items she left me. But those days are over. I've told her several times that the food she brings often ends up being unidentifiable, and I end up throwing it away. I've also told her that both my son and I are on restrictive diets, so I can't accept most of it. Recently, she started leaving food outside my dining room window, which makes me uncomfortable, especially since I've posted a nap time, do not disturb, sign on my door, which she doesn't always respect. Sometimes she even peeks in through the window to see if I'm home. This is starting to get on my nerves, and I resent the constant food donations. My son thinks I should just accept the gifts and throw them away without telling her, but I've been honest with her about why I can't accept the food. Yesterday, she left a package of freshly made food on my windowsill, and after bringing it inside, I bagged it up, wrote a note saying no thank you, and returned it to her front stoop, along with the empty containers from last week. The situation now, I don't think she's lonely. She has a husband, 2 roommates, pets, and family nearby. I'm just at my wit's end and feel like an ungrateful person, even though I've told her repeatedly that I can't accept the food. So, am I the asshole for refusing her gifts and returning them? And will this ever stop? Am I the asshole for yelling at a couple because of their kids at the airport? Last year, I, 16M, went backpacking across Europe with my mom, 44, for 3 weeks. It was an amazing trip, but towards the end, we both got sick. I had a minor rash, but my mom got hit much harder with symptoms like headaches, fever, nausea, and inflamed patches on her neck. We were a day away from our return flight, and medical options in Rome weren't great, so we decided she'd see a doctor as soon as we got back. By the time we landed in California after a 16-hour flight, my mom was exhausted, practically a zombie from the trip and her worsening illness. We were in line at customs for American citizens, and right behind us was a couple with 2 kids, around 4 and 7 years old. It was a long line, and we were stuck with them for at least 20 minutes. The kids were wild. They were screaming, running around, bumping into people and stepping over our feet. The parents seemed unbothered, casually chatting with each other in Italian. This was really bothering my mom as the constant noise and chaos made her headache even worse. I'm not the confrontational type, unlike my mom, who would speak up in situations like this, But seeing my mom suffer and not being able to say anything really bothered me. I kept telling myself I'd say something after one more time, but eventually, I reached my breaking point. I turned around, looked them both in the eyes, and said loudly but firmly, "You speak English, right? Keep your kids in line." The mom just stared at me, picked up her kids, and that was the end of it. My mom tried to say something before I spoke up, but didn't stop me. Afterward, she didn't say much either. When I shared this story with my coworkers, my boss said I sounded like a Karen, and that I overreacted. I felt like I held it together well under the circumstances, but now I'm second-guessing myself. A little more context, we later found out my mom had a staph infection and almost went septic, in addition to having multiple pre-existing conditions like cluster headaches, hyperthyroidism, she had her thyroid removed, sleep apnea, brain lesions from microstrokes, and heart problems. I know flying while sick wasn't considerate, but we didn't have the money to stay longer for medical treatment, and we needed to get back to our pets. My mom refused to see a doctor right away, and I wanted her to, but she insisted on waiting until we got home. She's stubborn like that, and once, she almost died from an infection because she didn't want me to miss work. So, am I the asshole for yelling at the couple and their kids at the airport? Am I the asshole for putting my grandma in a nursing home? Earlier this year, I, 24M, was given the chance to live in my grandmother's 92F house for free. At the time, she wasn't in a condition to live alone anymore, so she moved in with my uncle. Since her house would be empty, I was asked to stay there and take care of it. The plan was for the utilities and other expenses to be covered by her pension, so I wouldn't need to pay anything besides food. However, just a few weeks after moving in, the water was shut off. I had to pay to get it reinstated, and that was just the start of a series of bills I wasn't initially told about. In total, I ended up paying about $500 a month for bills that I didn't expect, which wasn't huge but definitely a deviation from what was originally agreed upon. A few months later, Grandma came back into the picture. She had been staying with my dad and stepmom while she recovered from a fall, but they were retired and had the time to care for her. They sat me down and explained that she would be moving into a nursing home, I'd stay in her house, and I'd also need to contribute toward the cost of the nursing home. The amount they mentioned was $1,200 per month on top of the bills I was already paying. This was all new information to me. Before any of that could happen, Grandma had another fall that left her incapacitated for a few months. She became wheelchair-bound, and the family discussed selling her house to help pay for the nursing home. During this time, she called me, begging me not to let them sell her house. She wanted me to live with her once she was well enough. She assured me that I wouldn't need to do much, just pay the bills I was already paying, help her get out of bed, and assist with cooking/cleaning. She said the nurses would take care of the rest. At first, everything seemed fine, but soon, things started to unravel. One day, after I worked a long shift, I decided to sleep in. My grandma lashed out at me for not being up to make her breakfast. The breakfast I had pre-made for her the night before, which she had said was tasty while I was cooking it, she now claimed wasn't fit for a dog. She also complained that the house was filthy, despite me having deep cleaned it only 2 days prior. This pattern of complaints and criticisms continued daily. I was also tasked with cleaning bodily fluids, changing diapers, and giving her baths. No outside help ever came as promised. On top of that, she started throwing tantrums like a child. This emotional abuse became too much to handle. I told my family I couldn't live with it anymore, and that I needed to arrange for her to be placed in a nursing home where professionals could take care of her. Now, I feel guilty for not being able to just take it and be there for her. Part of me feels like I should have stuck it out, but another part of me feels like I was pushed into a situation no one else wanted. So, am I the asshole for putting her in a nursing home instead of continuing to care for her myself? TLDR. I was asked to stay in my grandma's house for free and help take care of her. After several months of emotional abuse and being expected to do more than I could handle, I arranged for her to go into a nursing home. Now I feel guilty, but also like no one else wanted to step up. Am I wrong for doing this? Am I the asshole for ruining my mom's Thanksgiving? I, 34F, have a difficult relationship with my mom, 54F. She's high-strung, high-maintenance, and neurotic, while I'm the complete opposite. We've always butted heads because of our differing personalities. Leading up to Thanksgiving this year, my sister, 35F, and I repeatedly asked our mom about her plans, but she kept saying she wasn't sure and would get back to us. We asked a few more times, but still no concrete plans were made. At this point, my fiancé, 35M, and I decided to do Thanksgiving at his mom's house instead. We've been together almost 8 years, have 2 kids, and have spent the last 2 Thanksgivings at his mom's because my mom never made any plans. About 4 days before Thanksgiving, my mom finally asked if we had plans. We told her no, and at that point, I had given up hope on a dinner with her. My fiancé likes to cook turkey and offered to help his mom, so everything was set for us to celebrate with his family. The night before Thanksgiving, while I was on break at work, my mom called and asked what we were doing for the holiday. I told her we were going to his mom's house. This set her off completely. She cried, made a scene on FaceTime, and accused us of not loving her and said his mom was more important. She pointed out this would be the 3rd year in a row she was left out. I tried to reassure her, reminding her that we had asked about her plans earlier, but she hung up on me. I spent most of my lunch break trying to comfort her, telling her we loved her just as much and that if she'd made plans sooner, we would have gone to her house. I also told her I'd still visit her with the kids, but we wouldn't be hungry since we'd already eaten. This only upset her more. She told me not to bother coming and that she wasn't doing anything now, so she didn't want us there. Thanksgiving came, and we had a great time at his family's house. I didn't go to my mom's or call her because she had turned off her phone in anger. The next day, I saw that she had posted on Facebook, saying she hoped everyone had a good Thanksgiving and that nobody called or showed up, and that she was hurt. Here's where I might be the asshole. I showed my sister the post, and we both got upset. She was more upset than I was. I then posted a screenshot of my conversation with my mom in the comments, pointing out that my mom had told me not to come and shouldn't be playing the victim when it was really her fault nobody showed up. After seeing that other family members were siding with us, she deleted the post and I haven't heard from her since. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for ruining my mom's Thanksgiving? Am I the asshole for not letting my wife invite her friends to my shared beach house? After many years of work and significant financial investment, my siblings and I built the beach house of our dreams. Ownership is evenly divided among the 3 of us. While all of us are married, our spouses do not own any percentage of the property. Currently, we're figuring out how scheduling will work, who gets which weekends, when the house will be shared, and so on. My sister has always hosted a 4th of July gathering, a tradition she's continued for years at our parents' vacation house. This year, she's planning to invite her friends to the new beach house for the holiday. I have no issue with this. However, my wife is concerned that my sister will claim every 4th of July weekend going forward. She wants the chance to host her own friends for the holiday at least occasionally. My wife asked if I could reserve the 4th of July for her and her friends this year or next. I told her it would be tricky and that it would honestly be easier for everyone if she chose another weekend in July or August. This upset her. She feels it's unfair for my sister to always have the 4th and said that if that's the case, she'll have to travel to see her friends every year instead of hosting them at the beach house. I suggested a compromise. Since my parents' vacation house, also in the same area, will no longer be used for big family gatherings, we could host her friends there for the 4th. This way, she wouldn't have to travel and she could still host a group. However, she wasn't happy with this suggestion, saying she doesn't want to settle for the house nobody else wants. I suspect my wife feels I wasn't really listening to her concerns and rushed to find a solution instead of fully understanding her frustration. I also think there's underlying resentment about the ownership structure of the beach house. Because I technically own a 1/3 of it while she doesn't own any part, she might feel excluded. For example, I could more easily arrange to host my friends at the house than she could, which could make things feel unbalanced in our marriage. So, am I the asshole for not letting my wife invite her friends to the beach house for the 4th of July? Am I the asshole for ignoring my autistic sister? I'm 20, and I have 2 sisters, Sue, 14, and Mary, 19. Mary was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old. She is high functioning but has some social challenges and a lot of quirks. Growing up, my parents worked a lot and I ended up taking care of my sisters a lot, especially when I was 13. By then, I had essentially become the babysitter for them. Sue was still young, and Mary, though high functioning, didn't always cooperate. I had to be in charge, but I had little authority, which led to a lot of frustration. I didn't raise a hand to them, but I sometimes raised my voice or took my anger out in other ways, like breaking something outside. When I turned 16, things started to shift. My parents got Mary into therapy, and it seemed to help. However, after that, she started reacting more strongly. If I ever touched her, even by accident, or if I brushed against her, she would freak out, yelling, "Don't touch me, leave me alone," or, "I don't have to listen to you." These outbursts made me feel awful, almost like a predator, and her words still stick with me today. I began to avoid her as much as possible. I couldn't handle the constant tension and the fear of triggering another outburst. I tried talking to my parents about it, and they explained that her therapist had been teaching Mary to be more assertive with her words, rather than throwing tantrums. They reassured me that there was no issue with my behavior and that I just needed to get over it since she was still learning to communicate. I understand that Mary has her challenges, but I also feel like my feelings are being overlooked. I'm terrified of triggering another meltdown, and it's affecting my relationship with her. I've tried to be supportive, but honestly, I'm struggling with how to handle it. So, am I the asshole for wanting to ignore her and avoid contact entirely to prevent triggering another outburst? I get that she's learning and growing, but I'm really struggling with how to deal with this situation. Am I the asshole for taking the router from a shared apartment? My significant other, S/O, and I are in our 20s, and we've been dating for a while before moving into an apartment together. He's notorious for procrastinating, which leads to situations where he scrambles to get things done. Because of this, I ended up taking care of a lot of shared responsibilities in our apartment, ordering furniture, managing the internet setup, paying the utility bills, etc. However, over time, I started feeling increasingly uncomfortable in the apartment due to his behavior. He often left doors and windows open, even though I have a temperature-sensitive pet who could die if it gets too cold. Additionally, he stained a piece of furniture that was especially meaningful to me, something I had inherited from my now-deceased grandparents, and I was devastated by how he treated it. Eventually, we started talking about breaking up. He told me that he had ADHD and wouldn't be able to remember to take care of these things, meaning I'd always have to double-check everything. He even said I'd have to clean up after him and make sure doors were closed, but I wasn't willing to risk my pet's life due to his negligence. When we bought the couch and the modem/router, he had paid me half for them. As we discussed the breakup, he said he didn't want the router since it was under my name. However, when I started packing up my things, he told me to leave the router until he could get a new one. I argued that it was mine, as I had paid for it and the internet was in my name. Here's where things got strange. He got really confrontational and grinned maniacally at me, saying that I couldn't take the router because it's an essential service, and I couldn't deny him internet access. I know he has unlimited data on his phone, and he doesn't work from home, so the internet is really just for gaming with his friends. He had already told me he'd get a new router, but I offered to let him keep the one we had if he paid me for my half. The coaxial cord is my father's, and it wasn't even meant to be kept, so it technically wasn't ours either. I was planning to cancel the bills that day anyway, and I wasn't sure if the internet would stop immediately or if it would still be active until the end of the billing cycle. I also felt it was weird that he wanted me to come back just for a router, and I felt like he was lying about needing it just to avoid being without internet for a few days. He even threatened to call the cops on me over it, which I wasn't sure would cause any real legal trouble. Maybe they'd just ask me to return it. So, am I the asshole for taking the router? Is it really removing an essential service, and would I get into trouble for doing so? Note, this is a throwaway account because I don't want my main account linked to this situation, as it's a personal matter. Am I the asshole for requiring my sister's dog be kept separate from my reactive dog in my home? My family decided I should host the holidays this year, and my sister, who lives a few hours away, didn't confirm her attendance until recently. She assumed her new puppy, who is not house-trained, would be welcome. I initially went along with it, but after speaking to my dog trainer, I realized there were significant safety concerns. I have two large dogs, one of whom is extremely reactive due to being attacked by a stray in the past. He only gets along with his bonded sibling, and even they require strict supervision due to his reactivity and resource-guarding behaviors. My sister knows my dog's history. She also used to have a reactive dog and had rules about not allowing other dogs in her home. After speaking to my trainer, who has been helping my reactive dog manage increased stress and behavioral setbacks from a recent move, I learned that having another dog in the house could create a dangerous situation. The trainer recommended keeping the dogs completely separate if the puppy had to come and avoiding any interaction to ensure everyone's safety and to prevent a regression in my dog's progress. I reached out to my sister, apologized for the change of plans, and explained the safety concerns. I suggested alternatives: a dog sitter for her puppy, an Airbnb for her family nearby, using my finished basement with a private entrance and fenced yard for her puppy, while my dog stayed upstairs. She refused all options, citing that she didn't want to spend money on an Airbnb or a sitter because it's the puppy's first Christmas. Note: she recently returned from a vacation and is in a high-income household. She didn't want her dog hidden in a basement or to sneak her dog in through a separate entrance, even though she keeps the puppy in her downstairs area when she's busy at home. Some family members sided with her, saying I was putting her in a tough spot, being a bad host, and that my boundaries weren't real and were just me being difficult. They felt I should let her do what she wants. After hearing these criticisms, I became overwhelmed and emotionally uninvited my sister and any family members who sided with her, suggesting they plan their own holiday elsewhere, since they wouldn't abide by the rules. Am I the asshole for kicking my dad out of the house or leaving him to deal with foreclosure? My fiancé and I moved into my childhood home in May of 2024, where my dad had been living since my mom passed in 2020. He's a truck driver and often travels. He offered the house to us when our lease ended, saying we just need to cover utilities and take care of the house. However, once we moved in, we realized the utilities hadn't been paid regularly, leading to back payments. Then, last week, I found mail from a bankruptcy lawyer addressed to my late mom and learned that the house is in foreclosure due to 25 missed payments and a reinstatement fee of over $32,000. I contacted the mortgage company, and they gave me 3 options: pay the reinstatement fee, apply for home assistance, or sell the house. Since I'm not on the deed, I can't pursue the second or third options without being added. My dad, however, wants to save the house, but he's shown time and again that he's irresponsible and untrustworthy, especially with money. Now, I'm considering whether to move out with my fiancé, leaving him to handle the foreclosure, or request a full transfer of the deed to me and see what options are available. The house was in my mom's name, and she would never have wanted this for me. My dad received over $100,000 in life insurance money after her passing, which he squandered on renovations. And here we are. Am I the asshole for wanting to take control of the house and potentially kick my dad out, or should I just leave him to deal with the foreclosure and move on? Am I the asshole for not going on my best friend's bachelorette trip? I, 21F, and my best friend Christy, 23F, have been incredibly close for years. We worked together, spent a lot of time together, and shared so much of our personal lives that it felt like we were sisters. Christy was in a relationship with Brian, who was deployed in the military. Before he left, he proposed to her, and they planned to get married shortly after his return. When the time came, Christy asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, and I was thrilled to say yes. I had already been a bridesmaid in another best friend's wedding and was excited to support Christy in the same way. We both worked at the same job, but I was in a different position and paid less than she was. So, I was involved in wedding planning, but as things progressed, I asked Christy if I could opt out of the hair and makeup services because they were too expensive for me. She was totally understanding and said it was fine as long as I stuck to the theme. Leading up to the wedding, I kept hearing about the bachelorette trip, which was planned for a location 4 hours away. I had mentioned multiple times that I might not be able to afford it due to my financial situation, and I didn't want to hold the group back. Christy reassured me that it was okay as long as I could attend the wedding, which I had already blocked out on my calendar. She even said her mom had offered to pay for my trip, but I couldn't justify taking off more time from work and spending money I didn't have. I was already covering my share of wedding expenses, including gifts, the bridesmaid dress, and regular bills. The dates for the trip were announced, and it just so happened that they overlapped with my little sister's special birthday weekend. It was a milestone birthday for her, and I absolutely couldn't miss it. After giving it a lot of thought, I decided to tell Christy that I wouldn't be able to attend the trip. Just as I was preparing to tell her, I found out that the wedding was canceled by Brian for unknown reasons. I took time off work to be there for Christy because she was devastated and needed her people around her. Even though it hurt my finances, I helped with cancellations, returns, and everything else she needed. I even let her keep all the wedding gifts since she was moving into her own place. Christy thanked me for everything and especially for being there during such a difficult time. A few days later, I found out that the bachelorette trip was still on. I told Christy again that I couldn't afford to go and reminded her that it fell on my sister's birthday. She got very angry and accused me of lying about my financial situation and my sister's birthday. She called me the worst friend and said I hadn't supported her through the wedding cancellation. I was devastated because I had given so much of myself to help her during such a tough time, and now she was attacking me. Am I the asshole for not going on my best friend's bachelorette trip? Am I the asshole for telling my mom her stress doesn't mean she gets to be a jerk? My mom has been under a lot of stress lately. Her mother, who was visiting, fell and broke her hip and is now in the hospital recovering. My mom has had to help out with her and my grandfather, who are from out of town and can't go back home until the doctor clears my grandmother. I understand she's going through a tough time, and I try to be supportive. Tonight, I went to talk to her about a convention I'm attending in 2 weeks and the parking situation. There's a parking garage just a 2-minute walk from the convention center, so I was explaining how I plan to park. She seemed tired, so I offered to discuss it more in the morning after she'd rested. But she insisted it was fine to talk about it then. After a brief chat, she went off on a rant, saying that since I'm a young woman, I'm 22, I'll probably be assaulted if I go, and that she's not comfortable with me attending. I tried to explain that I'm an adult and have the right to choose where I go, and I just wanted to let her know my plans and ask for her opinion on parking. But instead of listening, she got angry, yelled at me for forcing the conversation on her, and told me to shut up before storming off. Later, I was looking for a box of my things. We recently remodeled, so I asked her where they were. She told me she moved them and promised she didn't throw anything away. I've had issues with her throwing away my stuff in the past, so, admittedly, I snapped and said, "Yeah, I've heard that before," as I walked away. I know that was a jerk move on my part, but I was still upset from the earlier argument. When I found the box, it was shoved upside down behind other heavy boxes, marked fragile, and had irreplaceable items inside. I went to her and asked her to be more careful with it, but she just ignored me and left the room. About 20 minutes later, I overheard her talking to my brother about how I was ungrateful and needed to get my head out of my ass. I opened the door and told her I didn't appreciate being badmouthed, and she yelled at me again, saying I was ungrateful and that her stress was the reason she was acting that way. I responded by saying that her stress didn't give her the right to treat people poorly. Once again, she yelled at me to shut up and left. My brother is on her side, and while I acknowledge that my comment about her throwing things away was an asshole move, I don't understand why she seems to think her stress gives her permission to make me the villain in every situation. I feel like I've been treated unfairly, but I know I may not have handled things perfectly. So, am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole for having issues with my sister-in-law for telling my daughter no? I, 30F, have had issues with my sister-in-law, Anna, 32F, for a while now, and the latest situation just made things worse. A couple of weeks ago, Anna and my brother-in-law, Evan, were watching my 5-year-old daughter, Olivia. When it was time to leave, Olivia asked me for a snack that was in the house. Anna jumped in and said, "Are you asking your mom for a snack? I don't know why you're asking her for the snack. This isn't her house and those aren't her snacks. I'm just trying to understand." Then she added, "Just to let you know, she already had that snack not even 10 minutes ago." Mind you, Olivia was asking for a beef stick, and I didn't feel like there was any harm in letting her have it. I didn't know how to respond at the time, so I just wanted to leave the house as quickly as possible. But on the car ride home, I started to think about it and realized how messed up it was for Anna to deny my daughter a snack, especially in such a rude way. My daughter was just doing what she was supposed to, asking me, her mom, for something she wanted. If I say yes, then cool, and if I say no, we move on. When I told my husband about the situation, he was really upset. He texted Evan to confirm what happened, and Evan admitted it was true. However, he also added, "It's not an excuse, but Anna is having a bad day." My husband, who grew up as a chunky kid, was particularly hurt by this because he remembers feeling ashamed when asking for food, and he felt that Anna's refusal was possibly related to Olivia's weight. My husband also isn't very fond of Anna, so after this, he decided he didn't want to attend Thanksgiving with her. Evan tried to convince us to go, saying Anna would be there, but when we showed up, Anna didn't say a word to us and just sat on the couch with a bad attitude. A few days later, my husband met with Evan to discuss the incident. According to him, Anna isn't sorry about what she said and believes we overreacted. Anna feels like she didn't do anything wrong and thinks the whole thing is blown out of proportion. This isn't the first time Anna has crossed a line with Olivia. There's been other instances where she has yelled at Olivia and her own daughter, including once when she said, "If you don't start listening, I'm going to throw you both against the wall." When I spoke to Anna privately about this and told her I would appreciate it if she didn't speak to Olivia like that, she shrugged it off and said, "It doesn't matter what I say. She's just going to learn to be afraid of me." Another time, we were getting ready to leave Anna's house, and my niece yelled that she wanted to go to her room to get something. Olivia excitedly said, "I'm going to go with my cousin to her room." Before I could respond, Anna screamed, "No, go outside," to Olivia. I feel like this last situation was the breaking point for me. I've tried to be understanding, but I'm just tired of how Anna treats my daughter. Am I being too sensitive about this? Am I the asshole for having issues with Anna for denying Olivia a snack and for how she's treated her in the past? Am I the asshole for stopping weekly dinners with my sister until she can either parent her kid or stay quiet about it? I, 30F, used to invite my sister J, 35F, and my niece L, 12F, to weekly family dinners every Friday. However, lately, Jay has been consistently turning every dinner into a session where she vents about her parenting struggles with L. Normally, I'd be open to lending a supportive ear, but it's reached a point where every conversation feels like a version of the same thing, and it's starting to drain me. Most of the time, it goes like this. Version 1. Jay. The meds aren't working because Elle stays up all night on her phone and then sleeps in class. Me. Okay. Take away the phone before bed and don't give it back until the next morning. Problem solved. Jay. Well, I don't want to do that because then she gets mad at me. Me. Then what do you expect me to do? Version 2. Jay. Elle doesn't listen to me. I'm always getting calls from her school because she gives the teacher's attitude. Me. Okay, then you need to figure out and enforce a punishment, because that's not acceptable behavior. J. CL? Auntie says, me. No, I'm not telling her to do anything. You're the parent, not me. You need to tell her what she is and isn't allowed to do. As you can see, I'm trying to offer practical solutions, but it's like Jay doesn't want to follow through or have any real solutions. She just wants to vent endlessly without actually making any changes. I'm getting really drained by it. I work long hours, and I just want a pleasant, relaxing dinner where we can talk about anything other than parenting struggles. So, I told Jay that I wasn't going to resume our weekly dinners until she could either step up and start parenting Elle, which I feel like she's not doing, or stop bringing it up every single time we're together. I told her that I'd be happy to listen to her vent, but I don't want to keep hearing the same complaints with no action taken on her part. Jay got upset and lashed out, accusing me of not caring about her or Elle, especially because I know her husband, Bael, isn't around to help consistently. She said I was being unsupportive for not listening to her struggles. I understand that she's going through a tough time, but I feel like I've been offering the same advice over and over, and nothing changes. I'm tired of having the same conversation week after week. My husband and I have talked about it, and we both agree I've set a boundary to protect my own mental space. So, am I the asshole for stopping our weekly dinners until she can either parent L or stop bringing it up every week? Update. AITA for ruining the surprise my boyfriend organized for my birthday? First off, I want to apologize for not responding to any of the comments earlier. I honestly got overwhelmed by the amount of attention my post received, and I wasn't sure how to handle the hundreds of people offering advice, especially telling me to break up with my boyfriend. I guess I was just trying to process everything and didn't know how to deal with all the support and feedback. So we did break up. I know some people were hoping for a dramatic confrontation, but that's just not how I handled it. To be honest, I'm terrified of conflict, so it wasn't as bold or dramatic as people might have imagined. I didn't confront him with the comments or anything. I'm not really the type to bring up stuff like that directly. We did technically make up the day after my birthday when I posted my original post. But looking back, I realized that we hadn't really resolved anything at all. He just made me apologize to him for my reaction, and I didn't get a chance to express my anger or how hurt I felt. Now I see that I was just swept along in his apology without having the chance to really process things. I tried to take some time and figure out how to approach it, thinking I'd bring it up later in a calm way. So, the next day after lunch with him, I ended up asking him why he did what he did. It wasn't something I planned on saying at the time, but the anger had been simmering, and I didn't know how to ignore it anymore. I tried not to sound angry because I don't like to come off that way, but I had to ask. His response was so off. He said he wanted to get to know the people that raised me, which didn't make any sense considering that I've literally told him a million times that my older sister is the one who raised me, not my parents. When he met my sister and her husband, we actually joked about it like meeting the parents, and that should have been a clue. Then he said something that made me realize I couldn't move forward in the relationship. He said, "I don't understand how someone can stop talking to their family." I've explained to him so many times why I've cut ties with my parents. He's asked me more than once, and I've always answered. But this time, hearing him say that, I think it clicked for me that he just doesn't get me. He hasn't made any real effort to understand why I feel the way I do about my family. So, I ended up telling him that I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who doesn't respect me or what I want. I dropped him off, and after that, I told him I didn't want to see him anymore. He didn't take it well, of course, but honestly, his emotions aren't my responsibility anymore. I feel really sad right now because even though I know this was the right decision in the long run, breakups still suck. I did love him, and it's hard to let go of someone you cared about. But I'm hopeful that in time, I'll feel okay. I really appreciate all the support from everyone. This meant a lot to me during this tough time. Boyfriend gets easily irritated with me. I just need to vent because I'm feeling really confused and frustrated with my boyfriend, 25M, and our relationship right now. We've been together for about a year, and things have really shifted over the past couple of months. At the beginning of our relationship, we barely argued. Our first actual argument didn't happen until we were about 8 months in. So you can imagine my surprise when suddenly, it feels like everything I do irritates him. And he starts saying things like, "Stop asking" or "Stop overreacting." It's been happening more and more frequently, usually once or twice a week, and I'm not sure how to deal with it. I knew when we got together that he had a bit of a resting bitch face, RBF, but I accepted that as part of who he is. The problem now isn't his face, it's his tone. When something doesn't go the way he wants, his tone completely shifts. It's like the smallest things set him off. For example, I might ask a simple question that he thinks I should already know the answer to, or I suggest something like getting fast food and suddenly it's a big deal. It's not just the words, but the way he says them. He'll tell me, "Stop talking out of your ass. That's not even an option right now," and then storm off to his room to cool off. This leaves me feeling really isolated and confused. It's such an overreaction to something small, and it makes me feel like I'm walking on eggshells. To try and understand what's going on, I've started keeping a journal where I write down the dates and summaries of each argument. There's a pattern. It's almost always about something minor. I forget a quest name in a game, I don't remember something specific he told me about his car, or I ask him if he's upset, and suddenly, I'm overreacting or reading into his tone. Like last night, we were playing a game together, and I couldn't remember the name of a quest that I didn't have access to anymore. I gently explained this to him, but he got more and more upset, shouting at me for not knowing it, even though it wasn't possible for me to remember. Eventually, I snapped and said, "Why would I remember the name of every quest in the fucking game?" He didn't like that, and then he just stopped playing with me altogether. We ended up sitting in silence for hours, and when we went to bed, nothing was resolved. It's the same thing every time. These little moments where I feel like I'm being unfairly criticized or yelled at for things that don't matter. For example, I asked him if he was okay at the wrong moment, and I was told that I'm too paranoid because I have BPD. Or I was criticized for not walking far enough without needing to sit down. I'm underweight and lack muscle mass due to being sedentary. The one that really stings is when I started asking him the fun, random questions like, "Would you still love me if I were a worm?" Something that he used to think was cute and funny. Out of nowhere, he snapped at me, saying, "Stop asking those weird-ass questions." And I just don't get it. I thought he liked those goofy moments, and now they're just a source of irritation for him. I'm just so confused. I'm head over heels for this guy, but it feels like nothing I do is right anymore. I feel like I'm constantly annoying him, and whenever I try to check in on how he's feeling, like asking, "Are you upset?" I'm told I'm overreacting and starting fights. His tone has completely changed. He used to be so gentle with me, and now it's like I'm always on edge, waiting for the next little thing to set him off. I feel like I'm losing myself in this relationship, and I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to keep walking on eggshells, but I also don't want to lose him. Am I the asshole for calling the police about the deranged sounds coming from my neighbor's apartment? I'm a woman in my 50s, and I live in a small building where my neighbor, John, a man in his 20s, and I have always had a fairly neutral, neighborly relationship. We text occasionally about building issues or sign for each other's packages. Nothing beyond that. We weren't friends, but we got along just fine. One afternoon over the summer, I was taking a nap when I was suddenly awakened by an incredibly disturbing sound. It was a high-pitched, keening wail that sounded like it could be either an animal or a human in extreme distress. It was so unsettling that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I went out into the hall, and a few other neighbors were already gathered, equally confused and alarmed by the sound. We quickly determined that the noise was coming from John's apartment, but we couldn't figure out what was causing it. John didn't have a pet, which made the whole situation even stranger. The sounds continued for at least 90 minutes, and it sounded like either an injured or dying animal, or worse, a person in distress. I texted and called John multiple times, leaving messages about the sounds and expressing my concern, but I got no response. By this point, the other neighbors were also freaked out and suggested we should call the police to make sure no one, or no animal, was in danger in his apartment. I texted John one last time to let him know I was about to call 911. I didn't know what else to do. I called the police, explained the situation, and they could even hear the sounds in the background. Shortly after, John called me back, sounding very angry. He yelled, "You called the police. What were you thinking? I'll take care of it." About 20 minutes later, a man arrived at the building and opened the door to John's apartment. As soon as the door opened, the sound stopped, and an adorable bulldog came running out, wagging its tail. The man, who I assume was renting the apartment from John through some Airbnb-type arrangement, got on the phone and started arguing with John. I overheard him saying things like, "Well, you didn't say anything about pets." Apparently, John hadn't mentioned the dog, which is why we were all so confused by the distressing noises. I immediately called 911 back to let them know everything had been resolved, and the operator said everything was fine and no police would be coming. After that, I assumed everything was over, but then, about an hour later, John showed up at my door, furious. He was pounding on it, yelling about me calling the police. I explained again that it wasn't just me who was concerned. Several neighbors had gathered, and we were all worried about the strange sounds coming from his apartment. Since then, John has completely ignored me. He doesn't reply to any of my messages, and he doesn't even acknowledge me when I see him in the hall. It feels like he now views me as some kind of troublemaker, and I can't help but feel guilty. I'm also worried that he might think I acted insensitively as a white person calling the police on him, a black man, when that can have tragic consequences in this country. I am black as well, but at the time, my only concern was the strange, painful-sounding noise coming from his apartment. The situation scared me, and I felt that calling the police was the right thing to do. But now I'm wondering if I overreacted and whether I handled it in the wrong way. So, am I the asshole for calling the police about the disturbing sounds coming from my neighbor's apartment? Am I the asshole for needing a me day after vacationing at the in-laws for a week? I've recently been called an asshole for needing some time to myself, and I'm honestly questioning if I'm in the wrong. So, here's the situation. I went on a week-long vacation with my husband to visit his family. This is not a vacation for me by any stretch of the imagination. His family is, to put it bluntly, not my biggest fans. They come from old money, live in a fancy house, and have a way of looking down on people like me, people from humble beginnings. I know they don't think I'm good enough for their son. I get it, I accept it, and I don't let it bother me too much. But here's the thing. It's emotionally exhausting. I'm the type of person who tries to make the best of any situation. I want to support my husband, and I want to make sure that, at least when I'm around his family, I'm being positive, adaptable, and doing what I can to keep the peace. I bite my tongue when they make condescending comments about where I come from, and I put on a smile even though I'm dying inside. My husband's relationship with his family is really important to him, so I don't want to cause any issues by confronting them. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the strain of it all. Vacationing at his family's house feels like a long series of emotional punches. Every dinner, every conversation, every comment just takes something out of me. And by the end of the week, I'm absolutely drained. After we got back home, I asked my husband if I could have a me day. I wanted a day to myself to just recharge. No work, no responsibilities, no social obligations. Just me at home, doing whatever I wanted. I didn't think it was a big ask. Honestly, I thought I had earned it after the emotional labor of spending a week with his family. But my husband didn't see it that way. He got really upset and called me an asshole for wanting to take the day off. He said that I was being lazy and that there were so many things to do around the house, especially with the holidays coming up. He felt like I was just avoiding responsibilities, and that made me feel even worse. I tried to explain to him that I wasn't being lazy, I was just emotionally exhausted and needed to decompress. But it didn't seem to get through to him. He thinks I'm being selfish and that I should just power through like everyone else does. I get that we're getting closer to the holidays, and there's a lot to do, but I really don't think it's too much to ask for a single day to reset my mind and emotions. Am I the asshole for needing a break after spending a week with his family? Should I just suck it up and keep pushing through? Or is it fair to ask for this me day? Expanded version asterisk to give more context. I've been married to my husband for a few years now. When we first started dating, I was warned about his family. His parents, especially his mom, have a way of putting on this air of superiority. I get it. They grew up with a lot more privilege than I did. But the judgment is real. I've tried to be polite and cordial, but sometimes it feels like no matter how much I try, they just don't see me as good enough for their son. I've had to endure side comments about my upbringing, the way I dress, even my career. They just don't understand where I'm coming from, and honestly, it's not something I can explain to them. When I was younger, I had to fight for every opportunity, every break. I didn't have the luxury of a perfect family or an easy path. But when I married my husband, I knew that his family came with the territory. I've always tried to be the bigger person, keep the peace, and let him have his relationship with them without me stirring the pot. The week-long visit was supposed to be fun and relaxing, but I felt like I was walking on eggshells the entire time. It's always the same thing. His parents hosting extravagant dinners, making passive-aggressive comments about my upbringing, and just the constant pressure to be perfect. I know I shouldn't let it affect me, but it does. By the end of the week, I felt emotionally drained, like I was carrying around this heavy weight that I couldn't get rid of. When we finally got home, I just wanted a day to clear my head. A day where I didn't have to be on for anyone. A day where I didn't have to smile through things that were making me uncomfortable or pretend that everything was fine. Instead, I wanted to be alone in my own space, to process everything that had happened, and just focus on myself. But my husband didn't see it that way. He just couldn't understand why I needed the time alone, especially with so much to do. I've been trying to balance everything, keeping up with work, helping around the house, and now preparing for the holiday season. But I feel like I'm about to break. It's not like I'm asking for a whole week off or anything crazy. Just one day to get myself back together. Is that too much to ask? I know the holidays are stressful for everyone, and maybe I should have just powered through, but I really feel like I need this time. My husband's reaction has left me feeling like I'm in the wrong, and I'm just not sure anymore. Should I have just sucked it up? Or is it okay for me to need this me day after everything I've been dealing with? Am I the asshole for asking my friend to stop making me a third wheel in his relationship? So, here's the deal. My name's Eric, 25, and I met my friend Zane, 26, 2 years ago during an internship program. When we first met, I thought Zane was super attractive, and honestly, I was a little flirty with him. But once I found out he was straight and had a girlfriend, I respected that and stopped any flirtatious behavior. Over time, we became good friends, grabbing lunch together and working on projects, though we never hung out outside of work. After the program ended, we didn't keep in touch much. Then, a few months later, Zane reached out and told me his girlfriend had cheated on him and dumped him. He asked if I wanted to go bar hopping, and I was happy to hang out. We reconnected and started spending more time together, going out at least once a week. A few months later, Zane started dating a coworker, Gia. She seemed really nice, and I met her a few times. However, things took a turn one night when I was at Zane's apartment. He went to shower, and I was left alone with Gia. She started grilling me about Zane, how many girls he'd been with, if I thought they'd last, and if I'd ever had a crush on him. I was honest and told her that when we first met, I did find Zane attractive, but that feeling passed quickly, and I now saw him as a close friend. Gia didn't seem thrilled with my answer, but thankfully Zane came back, and we went out. A few weeks later, I hadn't seen Zane or Gia much, but Zane reached out saying he missed me and wanted to hang out. We made plans, but when I showed up, Gia was there too. We went to brunch, and it was fine. But then, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I made plans with Zane, Gia was tagging along. What used to be a bro night now felt like I was a third wheel. The activities Zane and I used to enjoy together, hitting bars, bowling, kayaking, or grabbing lunch, were replaced with things that Gia enjoyed and I wasn't into. Now, most of our hangouts are at Zane's apartment, where we eat takeout and watch Zane and Gia play video games. I'm not a gamer, so I end up just sitting there on the couch, feeling like a spectator. To make matters worse, I'm driving 35 miles each way to hang out, and it feels like I'm losing my best friend. Zane and Gia work in healthcare too, so we only work 3 days a week, and Gia recently moved in with Zane, so they're together constantly. So, I've been thinking, would I be the asshole if I asked Zane if we could go back to hanging out one-on-one without Gia? I miss the times when it was just the two of us, and I feel like I'm losing that connection with my friend. I don't want to make things awkward or seem like I'm trying to exclude Gia, but I really miss spending time with Zane like we used to. What do you think? Am I the asshole? Here's the situation. My sister, 26, invited me, 24, on a trip to the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam with her and 3 of her friends. All of her friends are nice, and I get along with them, though I don't see them often since we live in different cities. The trip would be about 3 weeks long, and I'm excited about the opportunity. I told my boyfriend, 26, about the trip as soon as I was invited, and he immediately got upset. He doesn't want me to go because he wants us to experience those places together for the first time. He claims that if I go without him, I'll enjoy it so much that I won't want to go back and see everything again with him. We've talked about going to places like Vietnam together, and he had plans for us to ride motorcycles there, but that's not what I'll be doing with my sister's group. Our trip will be much more laid back and not focused on the kind of adventures we talked about. He's also said that he waited for me to finish my university years and didn't go on any trips when he had the money and time. I told him that I would have been totally fine with him going on trips with his friends while I was in school. But here's the thing.
Actualización 3. Ha pasado un día desde que escribí esa publicación. Tal vez Diana se despertó hoy y decidió vengarse. En lugar de contactarme directamente, se volvió aún más dramática y comenzó a comentar en mi publicación, tratando de hacer parecer que estaba mintiendo, pero no funcionó. Obviamente, tan pronto como intentó reaccionar, sus hijos empezaron a comentar y responderle, recordándole episodios específicos de su infancia, en los que ella había sido cruel con ellos. Eso duró alrededor de 1 hora y no me sentí mal por ello. Nadie lo hizo, porque mi sobrino, mis sobrinas y yo estábamos disfrutando mucho el proceso. La estaban humillando completamente, y no había forma de que saliera de eso, ya que cada mentira que intentaba decir para hacerme quedar mal fue descubierta. Me alegro de haber decidido hacer esto el fin de semana, porque de lo contrario no habríamos podido responder tan rápido. En fin, eso duró como 1 hora y luego ella comenzó a borrar sus comentarios para que nadie pudiera atraparla en sus falsedades. Sin embargo, ya era demasiado tarde, porque muchos otros ya se habían dado cuenta de lo que pasaba en la sección de comentarios, y creo que ella empezó a ser llamada la atención por otros. Entonces empezó a borrar todo y a retractarse de lo que había dicho. Después, me bloqueó. También bloqueó a sus hijos. Supongo que era su forma de rendirse, y me alegra que lo haya hecho, porque habría perdido en una pelea con nosotros. Claramente, nosotros teníamos la ventaja moralmente, o de cualquier otra manera. Creo que borrar los comentarios sería el final de nuestra conexión, pero eligió contactarme personalmente también. Me mandó un mensaje diciendo que esperaba que estuviera feliz ahora que la había presentado como la villana y todo el mundo la odiaba. Es muy irónico viniendo de ella, porque eso era exactamente lo que intentaba hacerme a mí. Ella lo empezó, y ahora que yo quise devolvérselo, no pudo aceptarlo. No entiendo por qué las personas intentan hacer drama cuando saben que no pueden recibirlo de vuelta. Simplemente, no causes drama si no quieres ser responsable de las consecuencias. De todas maneras, ignoré ese mensaje, y así es como vamos a proceder el resto de nuestras vidas, porque ya no vale la pena nuestra atención. Ella misma lo ha demostrado. Gracias por leer. Si aún no te has suscrito, por favor hazlo y activa la campanita de notificaciones para estar al tanto de más historias impactantes de la vida real que están ocurriendo a tu alrededor.
Update 2. I have a big update to share today. Since both my mom and Claire refused to acknowledge any fault for their actions, I felt I needed to teach them a lesson to leave me alone for the rest of their lives. I took their advice and wrote a detailed email to each member of my family, explaining why my sister was going through a divorce. I didn't hold back in detailing her affair with her boss and how she destroyed her husband's trust when he found out. But I didn't stop there. I also highlighted how my mom canceled my baby shower out of embarrassment over my sister's life choices and her reluctance to confront anyone. I wrote the email carefully, making sure every word would make them feel the anger and frustration they made me feel. I felt completely justified in my actions when I hit send. That email was my way of defending myself and showing everyone the truth behind the facade my mom and sister were trying to keep up about our perfect family. As you can imagine, my mom and sister reacted exactly as I anticipated. They started calling me furiously, leaving me voicemails, full of accusations. I consciously chose not to answer, letting their calls go to voicemail so I could listen later. Mom kept texting, insisting I send another email to retract my statements and emphasizing that I shouldn't embarrass my poor sister, but I ignored her. I'm sure both of them are getting calls from the family trying to verify the details in my email. I don't regret what I did. I'm sure my mom will think twice before interfering in my life again. Surprisingly, that's not all. My maternal grandparents also tried to contact me. They must have read my email and were clearly upset about me exposing my sister. Despite their attempts to reach me, I ignored their calls for my own peace of mind. I'm sure they're even angrier now, and that only brings me more satisfaction. Am I the asshole for telling my brother that his friend's parents threw away his college acceptance letter? Okay, so this happened today. For some background, my parents have been friends with Matt and Amy for many years. They have a son named Steven, who's 18, and he and my brother, also 18, are best friends. Today, my mom called me, I'm 20, and asked if it would be wrong to throw away a college acceptance letter for my brother, who had been accepted to a school far away, because she didn't want him to go. She would literally never do something like that, so I thought she was just being weird or funny, trying to tell me that my brother got into an out-of-state school. But then she got serious and asked me if it would be wrong, and I immediately, because I knew she would never do that, asked her who she knew that actually did that. She reluctantly told me that Matt and Amy had thrown away Steven's college acceptance letter for a school he really wanted to go to, just because they thought it was too far away. The thing is, the college isn't even out of state, it's only about a 4-hour drive away. I told my mom I was really disappointed that they were the type of people who would do that, and she said she had already told Amy off for it. Now, my mom didn't want me to tell anyone. She was just venting to me. She said if I told Steven, Amy would know that she was the one who told me. I agreed not to tell anyone, but I ended up calling my brother anyway and told him what happened. He was absolutely gutted for his friend. He said he'd encourage his entire group of friends to check the online statuses of any colleges they applied to, just in case acceptance letters got lost like Steven's did. That way, my mom wouldn't have to be in the middle of it. I thought that was a pretty good plan, but when I mentioned it to a college friend of mine, she thought I should stay out of other people's business. She said I was an asshole for meddling. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for telling my brother that his friend's parents threw away his college acceptance letter? Edit asterisk since I've gotten so many comments asking about it. I'm not sure if Steven received an email first before the letter came in the mail. I don't talk to him much. What I do know is that a lot of my friends received physical letters when they were accepted. That's why checking online was part of the plan. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my boyfriend's brother stay with us after we get married? I, 24F, and my boyfriend, 25M, have been together for 4 years, and we're planning to get married in 2 to 3 years. His family lives overseas, and he's been independent since he was young. Recently, we've been discussing future plans, and he expressed his desire for his 15-year-old brother to move here in a couple of years, finish high school, and attend college while living with us. Currently, we live separately and have decided not to move in together until we're married. While our relationship has generally been respectful and communicative, the past year has been rocky, mainly because of family-related issues. Here's where my concern lies. If we get married in 2 to 3 years and his brother comes to live with us at the same time, our married life would start with 3 people under one roof. I told my boyfriend that if his brother moves in while he's finishing high school and is still a minor, I'd be okay with him staying with us. While it would make me a little uncomfortable to start married life like this, I understand that a teenager cannot live on their own. However, my boyfriend insists that his brother live with us not only through high school but also throughout his entire college years. This means his brother would be living with us well into adulthood, potentially for another 7 to 8 years. I'm not comfortable with that. Context. I've spent time with his family to get to know them. His brother looks up to him, loves him, and respects him deeply. He would do almost anything my boyfriend tells him to. However, his attitude toward me is completely different. He's often disrespectful, calls me names under the guise of joking, and treats me like I'm unimportant compared to his family. Whenever I've brought this up, their family laughs it off, saying, he's just being a teenager. For comparison, I'm close to my cousins, some of whom are around the same age as my boyfriend's brother, and they have always been respectful toward my boyfriend. If they ever crossed a line, I've addressed it immediately because I expect respect from them, and I expect the same from my boyfriend when it comes to his brother's behavior toward me. My suggestions. I proposed that his brother could stay with us until he turns 18, but after that, he should move out when he starts college. If my boyfriend is worried about him, I suggested we could help him find a place nearby, like an apartment next door, so my husband and I can still have our privacy. But my boyfriend rejected this idea. Where we stand. We've had numerous arguments about this, and my boyfriend refuses to compromise. I finally told him that if, after we're married, I can't have privacy and time alone with my husband, then I'm not comfortable continuing this relationship. My boyfriend accused me of trying to keep him away from his family and said I don't understand the value of family because I'm an only child. That accusation deeply hurt me. After thinking long and hard, I've concluded that if we can't agree on this, it's best to break up and go our separate ways. When I told him this, he accused me of giving him an ultimatum. So, Reddit, Am I the asshole for refusing to let my boyfriend's brother stay with us after we get married? Would I be the asshole if I tell my roommate to put the cat box in her room? Here's the situation. I, F, 20s, have a dog, and my roommate, F, 20s, has a cat. We both agreed when she moved in that she would put one litter box in the living room and one in her room to follow the N+1 rule for cat ownership. I agreed to having the living room litter box even though I really hate litter boxes, I find them gross and I didn't want one in the shared space. But I figured I could compromise, since we were just getting to know each other and I didn't want to be difficult. Fast forward a bit. I found out that, for the entire time my roommate has lived here, there's only been one litter box, the one in the living room. She told me she had to throw out the second litter box because it was broken and that she'd buy a new one eventually. Well, eventually hasn't happened. I feel really angry and lied to because I thought there were two litter boxes, and now I find out that there's only one and it's in the common area. I've been trying to be cooperative, but I'm seriously fed up with having the litter box in the living room. I get that it's her cat, but I never wanted to have a litter box in a shared space. And the fact that it's only been one this whole time makes me feel like I've been misled. So here's what I want to know. Would I be the asshole if I told her that the litter box has to go in her room, and we don't need a second box in the common area since we've been getting by with just one? Asterisk asterisk, am I being unreasonable for insisting that it needs to be her responsibility to deal with the litter box in her own room? Important context asterisk. The litter box was moved out of my path recently, and I can't smell it right now, but that doesn't change the fact that I find it disgusting. I've been clear with her that I hate litter boxes. I didn't agree to having one in the shared living space, but I reluctantly accepted the compromise when she said there would be two. I just found out she's only been scooping the litter once a week. I nearly passed out when I heard that. The thought of a litter box that hasn't been cleaned in days is much worse for me. So, am I being dramatic and unfair to my roommate for wanting the litter box out of the living room? Or do I have a legitimate reason to ask her to move it into her room? Am I the asshole for not inviting my brother's girlfriend to dinner? I'll try to keep this direct. I, a 23-year-old woman, have an older brother who is 24 and his girlfriend who is also 24. Last year, my brother introduced his girlfriend to our family during a dinner he planned. He wanted to keep it small, so it was just him, his girlfriend, our parents, and me. The dinner went really well. I would say I have a good relationship with his girlfriend. We're not necessarily close, but whenever she's over, she'll come into my room and we'll talk. It's all good, just friendly. Our parents like her a lot, too, which makes her happy, and I'm glad about that. This week, I'm planning on introducing my boyfriend, who is 25, to my family. To give some context, this is the first time I'm telling my parents that I have a boyfriend. They're very protective of me because I'm their only daughter, so it's going to be a tough night. I liked my brother's dinner idea and decided to do something similar. I too want to keep it small, so I plan on inviting just my parents, my brother, and my boyfriend. I told my brother about the dinner plans, and he casually mentioned it to his girlfriend. Later, he told me that she was upset I didn't invite her, and that she thinks I don't like her, and am trying to exclude her from the family. I was shocked by this, but I didn't explain myself to my brother because I could tell he understood my intentions. None of what she said was true. Today, she came over, and when I went to say hi, she was cold towards me. She later told me how inconsiderate I was being with the dinner plans, and that since I was invited to her dinner, I should invite her to mine. I tried to explain my side, but she only replied that if I want to keep it small, I should just call my parents. However, if I'm inviting my brother, then I need to invite her too because, according to her, I should start considering her part of the family now. They've been dating for over a year, if that's relevant. My brother and I are really close, and I really want him there for support if my parents react badly to the whole boyfriend situation. Even if I didn't need his support, I would still want him there because he's my brother and he invited me to his dinner. I don't want this to turn into a big deal. I really do like her, but I just wanted to keep it small with my immediate family. Should I just cave and invite her? Am I the asshole for asking my ex-housemate to show receipts for miscellaneous expenses? I used to live with a housemate, Sandra, who had to leave quite suddenly due to a job falling through and visa issues. I also had to move out shortly after because I couldn't find someone to replace her in the room. Our arrangement was that Sandra would cover the electricity, I would pay for the internet and water, and we'd split the cost of cleaning supplies, including the cleaner we hired bi-weekly, evenly. We kept track of all the expenses on Splitwise. Sandra moved out at the end of September, and now it's December. I've been chasing her since the end of October to settle up, as our lease officially ended and we had a few small things to finalize. Sandra kept saying she needed to update the Splitwise for the cleaning supplies and miscellaneous things she had purchased earlier in the year and had forgotten to add. She even sent me a picture of a bundle of receipts in a Ziploc bag, but the photo was unreadable. After weeks of follow-ups and her promises to do it tomorrow or this week for sure, Sandra finally uploaded a bulk entry to Splitwise, claiming over $250 worth of cleaning and miscellaneous expenses. I was shocked because, as far as I knew, I was the one who usually bought most of the cleaning supplies, per the cleaner's requests. Sandra never went to the store because, frankly, she couldn't cook to save her life. I asked her to clarify what miscellaneous meant, and she accused me of implying she was lying about the expenses. However, she still hasn't provided any specific receipts. To make matters worse, I recently called the electricity company and found out that the $900 electricity bill for 2 months hasn't been paid, despite Sandra marking it as paid on Splitwise. Apparently, she forgot to pay it, and the last recorded payment was in July. I haven't brought this issue up yet because the bill is in her name, but it's definitely making me question everything. At this point, I'm just exhausted from constantly chasing her for payment and trying to get clarity. Honestly, the amount of money involved is relatively small, only a couple of $100s, but I'm starting to get frustrated because it's not just about the money anymore. It's about the principle of the thing, especially given all the lies and excuses. The situation is complicated further by the fact that we're now in different countries and time zones, so it makes it even more difficult to resolve. So, am I the asshole for asking my ex-housemate to show receipts for the miscellaneous expenses? Or should I just let it go, since it's such a small amount in the grand scheme of things? Am I the asshole for ending a lifelong friendship because of lying? I, 28M, have a lifelong friend, 28M, who I've known practically my entire life. Over the years, though, I've started to realize that I can't stand his constant lying anymore. He lies about things that don't matter at all, non-consequential things that seem to exist only to make him appear better or more important. These aren't just one-off fibs. It's a pattern that's been going on for years. Here are some examples of lies he's told. He owns a pharmacy. He runs a liquor business that sells liquor across the country. He's currently the side guy in an affair with a rich woman. He has millions of dollars in assets. He went undefeated in a fantasy football league and won it last year. His grandpa is dying. His grandma has dementia. One of the lies that really escalated my frustration happened after I opened up to him about the abuse I suffered as a child. His immediate response was to say that he had been abused by a female cousin. Disclaimer 1. I can't prove this is a lie, and I really hate to doubt anyone's trauma, especially when it comes to abuse. Disclaimer 2. Regardless of whether this was true, the timing of it made me regret opening up to him. I felt like, in that moment, my experience wasn't being acknowledged, and instead, he just shifted the focus to himself. He has also promised friends he could get things for them, like concert tickets for a sold-out show, only for the promises to fall through. For instance, he told a friend he could get tickets because of his job, and when the friend followed up and offered to pay whatever, it turned out that something happened and it didn't work out. There's also the fact that whenever we ask him if he wants to hang out and he says he's doing something or in a specific location, we know he's lying. He has his location shared with us on iPhone, but when we check, we often see that he's at home, even though he's told us he's somewhere else. The real issue is that it's become impossible to distinguish between truth and lies. For every lie he tells, just when we think we've caught him, he somehow manages to show evidence that makes it seem like he's not lying. Exhausting and confusing because it's hard to know when to trust him. I've tried to understand his behavior, thinking that maybe his lying is a coping mechanism because he feels lonely or insecure, but I'm honestly just too tired of it now. The lies are getting more frequent, and at this point it feels like a total lack of respect. While none of his lies have directly impacted my relationships with others, except maybe once or twice, it's wearing me down. It's become emotionally draining. Am I the asshole for preventing a shock collar for my dog? I recently moved into a new house with my in-laws, specifically my mother-in-law and father-in-law. The situation took a dramatic turn when we got into a heated argument in the family group chat. Mostly because I was away at work at the time. Here's the issue. Since moving in, my mother-in-law has been adamant about putting a shock collar on my dog. Now, to give some context, my dog is not a particularly loud or disruptive animal. He only barks when he sees delivery people, or if someone slams a door, which is really just him responding to sudden sounds. Despite me telling her that my dog doesn't need a shock collar, and that he's not as problematic as they claim, my mother-in-law insisted that he barks at everything while I'm gone. I told them multiple times I didn't want a shock collar used on him, but they dismissed my wishes, saying they were going to put one on him anyway. It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I finally snapped. I told them that if I came home and found a shock collar on my dog, I would destroy it. As soon as I said this, everything went downhill. The conversation exploded. They called me unhinged and claimed I was overreacting, suggesting that a simple smack on the ass was far less severe than using a shock collar. Now, mind you, this is coming from a woman who, before I married my wife, used to lock my dog in a tiny crate with a beagle in the garage. This wasn't a spacious crate. There was barely enough room for either of them to stretch out fully. And let's not forget, these were the same people who thought that this was acceptable behavior for a dog. The conversation spiraled even further when they accused me of being crazy and began bringing up personal details just to make nasty jabs at me. At that point, I decided to stop responding altogether. The real kicker? I'm now stuck in a 2-year lease with these people, and I have no idea what to do. I can't get out of this lease without facing significant consequences, and I'm living with people who clearly don't respect my boundaries when it comes to my dog. So now I'm stuck in this awkward and toxic living situation. I'm wondering if I overreacted here or if my reaction was justified. Was I wrong to stand my ground against the shock collar? Or am I blowing things out of proportion? Am I the asshole for uninviting a guest to my Christmas party? I, 31F, have been planning and hosting a Christmas party at my house. I've already decided on the theme, the time, the menu, and all the details. I invited my husband's stepmom, Amy, who is in her 30s, and her 4 to 5-year-old daughter to join us for the event. I sent her all the information, including the party start time at 11:30 a.m., the theme, and the menu. A few days later, we started discussing the party further, and Amy asked me if my parents would be attending. I explained that we already had a set guest list, and unfortunately, we couldn't add any more people, since we didn't have enough food or space for additional guests. She told me she wouldn't be able to make it at 11:30, but would arrive after noon so she could spend some time with her parents first. I said that was fine, but that the party would be starting at 11:30 regardless. Then, things got a little more complicated. Amy told me she was going to bring food to the party: ham, mashed potatoes, cornbread, stuffing, and dessert. While I appreciated the gesture, I told her we already had turkey and 5 large side dishes prepared and that we didn't need another full meal. I said she was welcome to bring a dessert or maybe a side dish, but we didn't need the whole spread. She responded that she was just trying to help. The conversation about the party kept going on, and she continued to suggest things like having her daughter decorate our tree and wanting to know more about the theme and the food. I started to feel uncomfortable because it felt like I was losing control over the party that I had been planning for weeks. I spoke to a friend of hers who suggested that I set clearer boundaries with Amy, so I did. This morning, I reached out to Amy and told her that I needed to know what time she planned to arrive, so we wouldn't start the kid games without her, and that I only wanted her to bring one dish, as we already had the food covered. She told me that she still wanted to bring the food, but would have us cook it instead. I explained that we just didn't have enough space for more food or decorations. Then, she mentioned bringing some decorations for the party to make it more festive, but I reminded her that the theme was already set, a gingerbread Grinch party, and I had already planned the decorations. At this point, she said she would back off and that she just wanted to be helpful, especially since they were moving in a couple of months and wanted to contribute. I told her that I appreciated the sentiment but had been planning the party for weeks, and that I just wanted to keep things simple. She then said she would show up around 1 p.m., stay for a little while, and leave early. I finally told her that, respectfully, it was my party and my house, and I had been putting a lot of effort into the planning and preparation. I said that if there was going to be any issues, maybe it would be best if she reconsidered coming. I told her that I'd love for her to come, but I didn't want any problems while I was decorating and cooking everything. Her friend later told me that I was being a jerk for not accepting her help and for uninviting her, saying she was just trying to be kind and helpful since they were moving away soon. Now I'm wondering if I took things too far. Was I wrong to set such strict boundaries and uninvite her? Did I go overboard by not letting her bring anything or take part in the party preparations? Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for attacking my ex's values? I've been reflecting on my past relationship in an effort to improve myself for future partnerships. My ex and I generally had a great relationship, but after a year together, I ended things because of our religious differences. However, there's one part of the relationship that still stings, and I'm unsure if I handled it well. About 2 weeks into the relationship, I was lying on her lap, and she asked me to get up because she needed to make a call. I asked who it was, and she told me it was her ex, because she wanted to wish him a happy birthday. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but that moment turned out to be a huge red flag. As time went on, her behavior with her ex became a recurring issue. She kept streaks with him on Snapchat, accidentally showed me intimate photos of them together, posted pictures with him on Instagram, and even took his calls while we were on dates. 8 months into our relationship, I expressed how much this bothered me, and I asked her to cut contact with him. She refused, which really upset me. To be clear, she never cheated, but I felt like her actions were disrespectful. I kept bringing up my concerns, and eventually I snapped. I told her how her values didn't align with mine, how she wasn't respecting me, and how I didn't want to be with someone who prioritized their ex over their current partner's feelings. I told her that if she had just blocked him from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this situation. I also told her that I regretted not leaving when she kicked me off her lap to make the call to her ex. She got furious with me, saying I was attacking her values and that I was wrong for constantly bringing this up. She pointed out that she hadn't cheated or done anything wrong, but I felt like her refusal to respect my boundaries was an issue. She apologized, but it never felt genuine to me because her actions didn't change. After we broke up, I requested no contact, and she got upset, disappearing without saying goodbye. Then, 2 months later, she reached out to ask if we could be friends. I blocked her because I felt that was the best way to protect myself, and I didn't want to put any future partner through what I went through with her. Now, I'm wondering, am I the asshole for being rude to her and holding this against her throughout the relationship? Did I overreact by constantly bringing it up, or by not forgiving her for something that wasn't technically cheating? Or was I justified in feeling hurt by her actions and trying to set boundaries that she refused to respect? Am I the asshole for forgetting a burger? So, I, 23F, got into a heated argument with my mom tonight over forgetting her burger, and now I'm wondering if I was in the wrong. Let me explain. I had a really long day. I finished a 5-hour exam, went straight to work, and didn't get home until 6:30 p.m. I didn't eat anything all day, no food, barely any water, and was feeling absolutely hangry. I wasn't being rude about it, though. I just knew I was hungry, and I told my mom I was going to Culver's to get food. She asked me to grab her an ice cream sundae since she'd already eaten dinner, which was fine. On my way there, she called me and added that I should grab her a burger too. Cool, no big deal, I can do that. Here's where things went wrong. I got home, sat down to eat, and realized I forgot the burger. The second I sat down, I was like, oh shoot. I told my mom calmly, I forgot your burger, but I'll get it after I finish eating. I had already mentioned how I hadn't eaten all day, and I was starving, so I thought it would be fine to eat first. But no, she started getting really upset, and I mean really upset. She kept nagging me with things like, OMG, how could you forget my burger? I called you on your way there. Why didn't you get it? It got to the point where I just snapped. I screamed out of frustration, I said I'll get it after I eat. I know I shouldn't have screamed, but I was frustrated. I didn't mean to be rude, but it's like, why is this a huge deal when she's already eaten and has her ice cream sundae? I wasn't refusing to get it. I just wanted to eat first because I was literally about to pass out from hunger. After I screamed, I did go and get her burger. But when I gave it to her, she threw it at my face because she didn't want it anymore after the whole ordeal. She was upset that I disrespected her by screaming downstairs in the living room. So, Reddit, AITA for forgetting her burger and for screaming in frustration when she kept nagging me about it? Should I have been more patient? Or was my frustration justified? Am I the asshole for not going to my friend's 30th birthday party? I've known my friend A for 8 years. When we first met, we were both in our early 20s, living a party-centric lifestyle. After a year, I moved 3 hours away from her to a different town. In the beginning, she came to visit me 3 times in the first year, but it still involved a lot of partying, and we didn't connect much beyond that. Over the years, my life has changed a lot. I got a partner, went to university, started working full-time to support myself, as I don't have family besides my sister. And I've become a lot busier and more focused on my personal growth. Whenever I'd visit the town where A lives, I'd message her to catch up. But over time, she either wouldn't respond or would cancel plans last minute. There were times she invited me to her holiday place, but I didn't feel close enough to go anymore. Despite all this, we stayed in touch through messages, but I gradually stopped reaching out when I visited since she never seemed to follow through. Recently, she visited near my town and I arranged to meet up with her. My partner and stepdaughter came along, but once again, she ghosted me and didn't reply to my messages. Now, A is having her 30th birthday party today, and it's 2.5 hours away. Initially, I said I could go, but my schedule is really packed. I'm in the final weeks of my first year as a school teacher. I just graduated from university a month ago, and I'm receiving weekly treatment for PTSD, which is exhausting. I told her I couldn't attend the party but would love to take her out to lunch in a couple of weeks when I'm in her town. Her response was that she knew I wouldn't come, and then she accused me of always doing this. She said, "Why couldn't I drive 2 hours?" And then told me our friendship was done before unfriending me on everything. Here's the thing. I understand that she's upset, but her past behavior has made it hard to maintain a connection. She's often flaked on me or ghosted me when I tried to make plans. I've tried to keep the friendship going, but her unreliability has made it difficult to feel comfortable continuing to invest in it. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for not going to her 30th birthday party? I was hoping to make it up to her later, but it seems like that's no longer an option. Should I have pushed myself to go despite everything? Am I the asshole for inviting my friend with cerebral palsy to Thanksgiving without consulting my family first? So, here's the situation. My 24-year-old son wants to host Thanksgiving at his house this year. We made plans through a group chat with my mom and sisters weeks ago about who would bring what food, and everything seemed fine, until the issue of seating came up. My son has a pool table in his living room, and there were concerns about how that might affect seating, but we thought we had that all squared away. Now, here's where the drama started. I've been helping out a friend of mine who's 34 years old and has cerebral palsy, with cooking for him a few days a week. I've known him and his family since he was 10, so he's like family to me. When I asked him where he was going for Thanksgiving, his dad mentioned that they'd probably just go to a buffet again. I thought it'd be nice if they joined us for dinner at my son's house, so I messaged this into the group chat. My son was happy with the idea and welcomed them, but then things quickly turned sour. The group started asking, "How's a wheelchair going to fit with the pool table?" Which was not a huge issue. The house isn't small. Then, they started questioning why I didn't ask them first. I was confused because it's my son's house, not theirs. The conversation then spiraled into more complaints about the pool table, my son's dog, and the idea of sitting across from someone with cerebral palsy. Long story short, it turned into a whole argument, and now my mom and sisters aren't attending Thanksgiving at all. I'm just really confused. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about family and togetherness, right? But now, I'm being told that I was in the wrong for inviting my friend without consulting everyone first. My friend's dad is still planning to come with him, so I've got 2 additional guests bringing food. But honestly, the whole thing feels like it's been blown out of proportion. Am I in the wrong here? Update. So, despite all the tension, everyone did end up coming to dinner. It was a very stressful week leading up to it, though. One of my sisters, who had been complaining about the extra guests, didn't even bring any food to share, despite saying she didn't have enough to bring for everyone. We had dinner at 5 p.m., and my friend and his dad arrived around 6. After the dinner, my mom and sisters apologized and said it wasn't as bad as they thought. My mom even told my son that it wasn't such a big deal after all. So I guess it all worked out in the end. Thank you to everyone who gave great advice and understood the situation. To those who went off into left field, I hope you learned to stay humble. Much love, Red Heart. I'm looking for some advice because I'm feeling a bit torn and unsure about a situation. I have 4 kids from a previous relationship, and they spend every other weekend with their dad from Saturday morning until Sunday evening. During school holidays, they might stay with him for longer stretches depending on his work schedule and any vacations he's planned. I've always tried to make sure that they have a good relationship with their dad, and I try not to interfere too much with his time with them. Right now, I'm currently 27 weeks pregnant with my 5th child, who will be my first with my current partner. We've been together for a year and a half, and things are going really well between us. He's incredibly supportive, and we've already started thinking about our future together. When we first got together, my partner asked me if I would be interested in going on a holiday with him, and I said yes, but with the condition that I would need to save up for it. Given that I have 4 kids and not a lot of extra money, I didn't feel comfortable with him offering to pay for everything. It was still early in our relationship, and while I'm very fond of him, I didn't feel right having him cover the costs of a holiday for both of us. He understood my hesitation, and we agreed that I would save up over a few months, and then we would go away once I had the funds. We had planned to go on this trip sometime after I had saved enough. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until I unexpectedly became pregnant with our baby. It was a bit of a surprise because I was on birth control at the time, but we're both really excited about the baby, as it will be his first child. However, because of how sick I've been during this pregnancy, it's been difficult for me to even think about traveling. I've been too ill to consider going on holiday, and I don't think it's realistic for me to go before the baby is born. But my partner recently brought up the idea of going on holiday after the baby arrives. He suggested that we go on a trip together, just the 2 of us and the baby, while my other kids are with their dad. I can tell that he's really looking forward to the idea of having some time away with just the new baby and the 2 of us. It's clear he sees this as an opportunity for us to bond as a new family and have some special time together. But here's where I'm struggling. I feel incredibly guilty about the idea of leaving my 4 kids behind while I go on this trip. To me, it feels like we would be presenting ourselves as a family of 3, my partner, the new baby, and me, and my other kids would be left out. I know that we're starting a new chapter with this baby, but I just don't want my older kids to feel like they're being pushed aside or excluded. They're already used to the idea of me having a new partner, but I don't want them to think that they don't matter because the baby has arrived. It feels wrong to me, even though I know my partner would never intentionally make them feel that way. I've already talked to my partner about how I feel, and he completely understands where I'm coming from. He reassured me that he doesn't want to push my other kids out of our lives, and he truly adores them. In fact, he does more with them than their own dad does, which has been a huge blessing. But he's also expressed how much he was looking forward to having some time just for the 2 of us. With the baby coming, he's aware that things are going to change, and he thought this holiday would be a good way to enjoy some time together before everything gets more complicated. Even though I know he has good intentions and doesn't mean to make anyone feel left out, I still can't shake the feeling of guilt. Part of me worries that if I go on this trip with just the baby, it will send the wrong message. I also feel bad because I know that once the baby is born, things will be more chaotic, and it might be harder to plan any time away as a couple in the future. So I understand why he's hoping to take this opportunity to go on holiday while we have the chance. But I just can't help feeling awful about not taking my other children along. At the end of the day, I want to make sure my kids feel loved and valued, no matter how many children I have or what the future looks like. I don't want them to feel like they're being replaced or overshadowed by the new baby, and I really don't know if going on a trip with just the baby is a good idea. What do you think? Is it wrong of me to feel this way, or am I just overthinking it? I want to do what's best for all of my children and my relationship, but I don't want to hurt anyone in the process. Am I the asshole for telling my friend's girlfriend not everyone wants to sleep with her? I 20F have a friend group that's mostly guys, and we hang out talking about cars and playing video games. One of my friends, Chad, fake name, recently started dating this girl. They're your stereotypical jock and cheerleader type, but in their 20s now. Chad's got a huge ego and is always showing off his muscles, while his girlfriend, let's just say, dyed her hair blonde because she said it was a way to look dumb. Her words, not mine. This whole thing went down 2 days ago. I was driving with Chad and his girlfriend in the back seat, and another one of my friends, John, was in the front with me. John and I debate a lot, but we're still pretty close. We went from talking about politics to discussing how men and women view each other. I made a joke about how people assume men and women can't be friends without eventually hooking up. John laughed, but then Chad's girlfriend jumped into the conversation and said, "Well, good thing you look like you." I didn't really understand what she meant, so I asked, "Keep in mind, Chad and John know I've had some issues growing up and used food as a coping mechanism. I've made a lot of progress, losing some weight recently, about 50 pounds from 250 to 200. So when she replied, "Well, no guy wants a girl who looks like that tire guy from the commercials. So many roles, AW." I was caught off guard. And yes, she actually said "ew" in front of all of us. I was shocked and upset, and I snapped back, saying something like, "You shouldn't be saying AW when your car smells like a fish market." The car went quiet for a good 5 minutes after that. I didn't really want to talk anymore, so I dropped everyone off at their places and went home. But here's where the drama started. The next morning, I woke up to see a post on social media comparing me to famous fat people like Fat Albert, Peter Griffin, Homer Simpson, etc. Of course, the accounts posting these things were following Chad and his girlfriend. I'm 100% sure it was her because besides my close friends who I play games with and talk cars about, the only other group I'm even remotely connected to is anti-phone and privacy conscious. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was her. Now, I'm left wondering if I overreacted. I told her that not everyone would want to sleep with her, but was I wrong for saying that? Did I take things too far? Am I the asshole for despising my housemates? I'm a second-year university student, and I'm living in halls again. In my first year, I lived with 4 other people, mixed gender, and became really close with 2 of them. However, due to some financial struggles in my family, I had to move back into halls this year because I couldn't afford to rent privately. This time, I'm living with 11 girls in a single-sex house. Some are my age and others are younger. At first, I tried to be civil and respectful, inviting everyone to freshers events and nights out, but quickly realized that they're just not my kind of people. I get that not everyone is going to like me, but I didn't expect things to get as bad as they have. I will say that there are a few decent people here. The girl next door is really kind, and I have no issues with her. But for the others, I just can't handle the privilege and clique culture that's developed in the last 3 months. Now, I know people often complain about cleanliness in shared living spaces, but I actually lucked out in that department. Most people clean up after themselves. The issue, however, is that the cleaning becomes overly extreme at times. For example, one of my housemates washed all the dishes in the first week, which was super kind, but then it became an expectation. I'm the type of person who cooks, washes my plates, and takes them back to my room to clean later. I might spend 10 to 20 minutes in the kitchen a day, but I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that everyone should clean up after themselves. I'm happy to help with communal chores like taking out the trash or sweeping the floor, but we're all adults here, right? The next things that began to irritate me were even worse. It went from petty issues to situations where my housemates just ignored me or refused to help. For example, once I had to pull out moldy popcorn and raw chicken from the bin because they refused to buy the correct size trash bags, and then they rolled their eyes when I asked for help. I've also had to deal with awkward moments like walking into the communal kitchen, only to see my housemates go silent and start texting each other or giggling behind my back. One of my housemates also kept me up until early morning because she called an ambulance for a seizure, which was later confirmed by paramedics to be just a panic attack. While I understand she needed help, she has a history of making everything into a huge drama for attention, which has made me feel increasingly frustrated. But the worst thing that happened recently has to do with my partner. He visits every week, something we've discussed and agreed on with the housemates. Sometimes we have some intimate moments together, and there's usually no problem. Until yesterday, when we heard giggling and shuffling outside my bedroom door, followed by a message from one of my housemates saying that it made them uncomfortable and that I should be respectful. Now, I get that it could be uncomfortable for others, and I apologize to my neighbor just in case it made her feel awkward, but I can't help but feel it's a little over the top. They were literally standing outside my door giggling, and yet, I'm the one being told I was disrespectful? The whole thing was so mortifying, and I now feel guilty and awkward even though it's clear that the other housemates are the ones who were intruding. All these incidents, plus small comments and other little things that keep adding up, have made living here unbearable. I'll admit that my own personal issues, like feeling lonely and isolated, might be making everything feel worse, but I just can't shake the feeling that I despise living with these people. Last year, I had such a positive experience living with my housemates, but this year has been completely different. So, am I the asshole for despising my housemates? I feel like I'm the only one who's trying to make things work, but it's becoming harder and harder to be around them. Am I the asshole for never giving away anything to my neighbor? I live in a large, upper-middle-class neighborhood with around 1,500 homes. We have a few Facebook groups where neighbors often give things away, sell items, offer services, or ask for help. The community is generally very friendly and generous. People frequently post about items they no longer need, and it's common to see someone offering free goods, whether it's baby gear, household items, or even tickets to local events. About a year ago, when I was 1 month postpartum, I decided to give away all the formula samples I had received in the mail and from my OBGYN. I had around 8 small cans of various formulas, so I made a post in the Facebook group offering them for free. Sarah, one of my neighbors, was the first to comment on the post. However, I didn't check the post for a while, and I ended up receiving a message from another neighbor. I responded to her first, and she came to pick up the formula. Afterward, I marked the Facebook post as claimed. That's when Sarah messaged me, upset that she had been the first to comment and had been waiting all day for me to reach out. She said she really needed the formula for her baby. I apologized and explained that I responded to the first person who messaged me, not the one who commented first. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. After all, I figured whoever was quickest to message me would get it. But Sarah was quite upset and didn't seem to understand. She said it wasn't fair, and I felt uncomfortable with her tone, so I just dropped it, thinking that it was a misunderstanding that would blow over. A few months later, there was another post in the Facebook group offering a jogging stroller for free. I commented on the post, and of course Sarah did too. The person offering it responded to me quickly, saying that the stroller had already been claimed. I didn't think much of it until later when Sarah messaged me accusing me of picking up the stroller. I told her that I hadn't taken it and that the post said it was claimed by someone else. She seemed convinced that I had taken it, even though I had no idea where the stroller was or who had picked it up. She said she had walked a mile to get the stroller, only to find that it wasn't there, and she was really upset. I repeated that I didn't take it, and I suggested that she reach out to the person giving it away. She kept pressing me, saying that I should have let her know if I had taken it, as she needed it. Eventually, she stopped messaging me, but the whole situation felt strange. It was clear to me that Sarah didn't really need the stroller. She just seemed frustrated that she wasn't getting what she wanted. Fast forward to today. I received a complimentary museum ticket from my work. However, I knew I wouldn't be able to use it before it expired, so I decided to post it in the Facebook group, offering it for free. Sarah, of course, was the first to comment. But then, a friend of mine texted me, saying she saw the post and was interested in the ticket. Since it was a small, inexpensive ticket, only worth about $15 to $20, I decided to give it to my friend, who I actually know and like, instead of Sarah. I deleted the post and sent the ticket to my friend. Soon after, Sarah messaged me, furious that I didn't give her the ticket. She reminded me that she was the first to comment, and that it wasn't fair that I gave it to someone else. I explained that I gave it to my friend because she wanted it, and because I personally know her. I felt that, since it wasn't much money, I could at least give it to someone I had a personal connection with. But Sarah didn't take it well. She went off on me, calling me inconsiderate, and then blocked me. I was taken aback because, honestly, I've never even met her in person. Now, my husband says I'm the asshole for not giving the ticket to Sarah, especially since she was first to comment and because I've never given her anything before. He thinks I should have honored the first to comment rule. But I disagree. We live in a neighborhood where generosity is common, and I don't want to just give things away to anyone who happens to comment first. I've never seen Sarah post that she needs anything specific, but she often seems to try to grab anything that's free. I'd rather give my things to people I actually know and feel comfortable with. To me, it's about the connection, not just about following an unspoken rule. I just don't think Sarah is entitled to everything she asks for. So, am I the asshole for giving my things away to other people instead of honoring the first to comment unspoken rule? Am I the asshole for needing a me day after vacationing at the in-laws for a week? I've recently been called an asshole for needing some time to myself, and I'm honestly questioning if I'm in the wrong. So, here's the situation. I went on a week-long vacation with my husband to visit his family. This is not a vacation for me by any stretch of the imagination. His family is, to put it bluntly, not my biggest fans. They come from old money, live in a fancy house, and have a way of looking down on people like me, people from humble beginnings. I know they don't think I'm good enough for their son. I get it, I accept it, and I don't let it bother me too much. But here's the thing. It's emotionally exhausting. I'm the type of person who tries to make the best of any situation. I want to support my husband, and I want to make sure that, at least when I'm around his family, I'm being positive, adaptable, and doing what I can to keep the peace. I bite my tongue when they make condescending comments about where I come from, and I put on a smile even though I'm dying inside. My husband's relationship with his family is really important to him, so I don't want to cause any issues by confronting them. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the strain of it all. Vacationing at his family's house feels like a long series of emotional punches. Every dinner, every conversation, every comment just takes something out of me. And by the end of the week, I'm absolutely drained. After we got back home, I asked my husband if I could have a me day. I wanted a day to myself to just recharge. No work, no responsibilities, no social obligations. Just me at home, doing whatever I wanted. I didn't think it was a big ask. Honestly, I thought I had earned it after the emotional labor of spending a week with his family. But my husband didn't see it that way. He got really upset and called me an asshole for wanting to take the day off. He said that I was being lazy and that there were so many things to do around the house, especially with the holidays coming up. He felt like I was just avoiding responsibilities, and that made me feel even worse. I tried to explain to him that I wasn't being lazy, I was just emotionally exhausted and needed to decompress. But it didn't seem to get through to him. He thinks I'm being selfish and that I should just power through like everyone else does. I get that we're getting closer to the holidays, and there's a lot to do, but I really don't think it's too much to ask for a single day to reset my mind and emotions. Am I the asshole for needing a break after spending a week with his family? Should I just suck it up and keep pushing through? Or is it fair to ask for this me day? Expanded version asterisk to give more context. I've been married to my husband for a few years now. When we first started dating, I was warned about his family. His parents, especially his mom, have a way of putting on this air of superiority. I get it. They grew up with a lot more privilege than I did. But the judgment is real. I've tried to be polite and cordial, but sometimes it feels like no matter how much I try, they just don't see me as good enough for their son. I've had to endure side comments about my upbringing, the way I dress, even my career. They just don't understand where I'm coming from, and honestly, it's not something I can explain to them. When I was younger, I had to fight for every opportunity, every break. I didn't have the luxury of a perfect family or an easy path. But when I married my husband, I knew that his family came with the territory. I've always tried to be the bigger person, keep the peace, and let him have his relationship with them without me stirring the pot. The week-long visit was supposed to be fun and relaxing, but I felt like I was walking on eggshells the entire time. It's always the same thing. His parents hosting extravagant dinners, making passive-aggressive comments about my upbringing, and just the constant pressure to be perfect. I know I shouldn't let it affect me, but it does. By the end of the week, I felt emotionally drained, like I was carrying around this heavy weight that I couldn't get rid of. When we finally got home,